went away from my cue. Good evening. Welcome to the Millbrae City Council. Roll call, please.
All council members are present.
Thank you. Now, if you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I saw a resolution. Where's our presentation? Where'd it go? It was on.
Oh, yes. It's not for tonight.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. We have one ceremonial presentation, a presentation of Millbrae Yellow Command exercise on September 6, 2018. Hello. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. On September 6th, we had an exercise, an EOC exercise called Yellow Command. It was done in coordination with San Mateo County as well as the entire Bay Area. It was part of our UWASI group that presented it. And the premise of the whole thing was to bring together all of our resources in a cohesive manner to demonstrate our ability to respond to a major earthquake. See if I can find my thing here. Got a new clicker.
And you forgot to introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry.
Please.
Is that it? Okay. Oh, there we go. I think so. No? There we go. All right. The scenario was an earthquake, a magnitude 7.9 on the San Andreas Fault. And as you can see on this by the slide, major damage, power outages, pipelines broken, 300 Millbrae residents seeking shelter, and 3,500 residents requiring feeding and other basic life-sustaining conditions. And that's not too unreal, considering the transient population we have with the hotels and things that would happen. During an earthquake like that, the airport would close, so we'd be inundated with a lot of people coming through. And this is probably milder than it could be. But we set the scenario up to be somewhat realistic, but at the same time not overwhelm our staff. By doing that, we had an opportunity to activate our Emergency Operations Center with some of the new technology that we put in there, and being able to use it and coordinate it with San Mateo County and our neighboring jurisdictions. The scenario was based as we were 96 hours into the incident. So this is a lot of things that already happened, transition, and we had background already in place for for staff. So they would be not comfortable, but set in, what the Bay Area was like at that time. So help wasn't readily on the way. All right, come on. There we go. The target capabilities and associated critical risks were evaluated. The primary ones we looked at were emergency public safety and security, emergency operations center management, and emergency care and shelter. The basic things we want to get going when we get an exercise, when we activate our emergency operations center. Certainly paramount is public safety and security, and that in an event like this, and you can imagine 96 hours into something, a lot of things are starting to calm down a bit, but there's still a lot of turmoil, and that's when we start to see what's really the problem. We start to run out of food, we start to get more desperate, and certainly that's a part of the facts of life we see in major disasters. So with that, we have to organize well to be able to mitigate that with the limited resources we'll have in the first few days before major help can come in. When we activate our Emergency Operations Center, it works under the Incident Command principles, and with that, there are 5 major functions. The first is a management function, and in that is the Director of Emergency Services, who is the city manager for the city of Millbrae, or his designee. In that capacity, he manages the Emergency Operations Center issues the initial proclamation of a state of emergency and approves all press releases. Primarily, this is initial things that he's going to be doing, as well as the responsibilities normally has with his job as a city manager. So you can imagine how overwhelming that will be. Proclamations early on are very necessary because with that, now we can initiate some of the things that we need to do as far as changing the way we normally do business. And we can be able to have people held accountable. We can bring in volunteers mandatorily. Our city staff becomes in disaster service worker mode, which changes a lot of the aspects of what we normally do. Okay, went the wrong way on that one. We also have public information officer established in that. And you can see this as it was set up right there. Our city clerk performs that function, and in that she monitors internal and external information and communications, drafts press releases as approved by the EOC director, and coordinates with the operational area joint information center. And this is really necessary. We want a clear, positive message going out during disasters and emergencies. And we have to have that, have the trust in our population to ensure that directions can be followed and be clarified. People will be desperate for information, and we have to give them good, clear information. So with that information system is really important, and that's something, please, as council especially, keep in mind, because you are the spokespersons for the city, and people look to you for that. So our job in Emergency Operations Center is to compile all that information, sure it's readily available for you, and then when it's time to release that, to put the word out, and you can, along with the public and your constituents in other cities, be able to share that. Also, as part of this, the city manager manages the 4 sections under that, and one of them operations. And basically what the operations section is the eyes and ears of the Emergency Operations Center. They're in contact with the field units, with all the incident commanders, and the people that are working in the field, public works, fire, police, and whatever else we have going on. In this case here, we had care and shelter going on, so we had a shelter operation. So they're bringing that information back into the Emergency Operations Center, sharing that with other sections. For example, the planning section. They'll feed the information to the planning section, who is responsible for documentation. As the situation develops, the planning section will have it posted, and it should be clear to anyone who walks up of what is happening at that time. So they have a list of things that were going on, to what extent. Our initial damage assessments will be in place to be able to get a kind of a snapshot picture of what's going on. And it's very dynamic, because as that's happening, they're constantly being updated. So they have to do that. And they have to make sure they track that information and keep it, because that's the information that at the end of the event, when the disaster is over, we look back to that for our reimbursements. And so we need that storyline to be maintained. Logistics section, that's where we're going to supply all the things that we need. All right, through that, we communicate within the EOC in a number of different ways. Face-to-face, certainly, and we use request forms when we need to get equipment and personnel that we don't have, and logistics takes care of all that. Our recreation department is primarily responsible for that, and they staff that. And with that, and it's a good department to go to, because they're used to taking care of people and getting things for people, so it's not unusual for them. And in this exercise, they did that. And so as we process through that, we use some tools to accomplish that. And one of those is Web EOC. It's a program that is used, internet-based program that's used not only throughout San Mateo County, but throughout the state. It's a standard way to communicate. And in that, we can make requests for equipment that we don't have. We also can maintain situational awareness, which is very important. Now we can have a more global picture of what's going on around us, and our county, the operational area, has a picture of what's happening and how they can support us. So that commonality is there, and it's all in one program that is used internet-based. And with that, we want to make sure we can maintain that. And I think you're aware of the fact that our Emergency Operations Center has backup generator and all that, so we should be in pretty sound shape for maintaining that. They also, logistics coordinates with finance to ensure a fiscal accountability. Really important as we get into this and think we start spending money, and you can spend it very quickly. Well, it has to be maintained, and we got to make sure we're always working within a budget of some sort. And so we can change some of the things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, about how we maintain that in a disaster. We might change the way we do business a bit, but at the same time, we still have to have that accountability. They also maintain a staffing plan. The finance section, again, they're going to be the nuts and bolts of the after-action part of it. When we come back, at the end, we go to recovery and how we're going to get through all this and get it paid for. They're responsible for cost accounting, timekeeping, purchasing, compensation and claims, and recovery. A lot of important things, but that's usually the last thing to close down. And we've seen the experience we've had in many of the disasters in the Bay Area. The finance part of it is the last thing that closes down at the end of the thing. Sometimes that goes on for months and months and months after. We also had a mass care and sheltering situation set up, and this was part of the scenario that was developed for our area-wide disaster. We were originally going to do it in cooperation with Burlingame, that was going to open a shelter, and we were going to support that as a regional type aspect. At the last moment, though, they were unable to do that, so we had to kind of put together our own, and we did it at Station 37 next door. And proud to say that we had some really great people step up to make sure it worked. Our certs, again, and I compliment them, they're outstanding. They came together to help make that work. And our Red Cross, came forward and provided some excellent support bringing equipment out, and they were able to process through. Certainly not the way we had originally planned, but they gained quite a bit of experience with it and confidence building as we go through it. So I think we were fortunate to be able to make that come together. We also helped us with our communications. We have our ham radio operators. In the Emergency Operations Center, we had them at the shelter operation, and we also were communicating with county on that aspect of it. So it was a great opportunity to do that, and I think overall we had a good experience. I think everyone that went through it would agree. We did a hot wash at the end of it, and with that we are developing an after-action and improvement plan. The things that went well and things that we need to improve on. I'm involved in doing that now. It takes a little time to get through the entire thing, but some of the things we've seen that I'll gladly share with you now is some more training that we need to do with WebEOC and section-specific training to gain more confidence and ability to work with each other. We established an employee emergency information line, which we didn't have. That's ready to go right now. I just have to get the advertising, get it out to everyone what it is. And what that line is for, in a disaster, a major disaster like that, if personnel are home, a lot of times they're wondering what to do. I remember back in 1989 when I went through that earthquake, we had a lot of our personnel just came to work. But this way here, it's one more way of doing it. We can use SMC Alert to push out information to them, which we have that in place. But the other way is coming in, that they can reach in. And with that information line, they can call in and we can leave information there as to what we expect. We want certain crews to come in, some to wait for the next day possibly, whatever that might be. We can leave that message on the line so they can call in and get it, and then it helps calm things down as far as our response. Because during a disaster, we don't want everyone coming in at the same time, especially if it's long term. We're going to have to get shifts. We want to be able to do that. So it's one way to manage that. We also looked at finance.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
Is that line a landline or a...
It's a landline.
It's a landline, okay.
A landline.
Okay, thank you.
Finance procurement policy during disasters, we looked at it, and our finance director wants to revise that and to look at it to clean that up a bit too. And it's always good to look at that and make sure we're looking at today's dollars. We're finding out some of the after actions we've seen in some of the disasters. If that isn't handled properly, you're looking at your reimbursement problems, and that's what we really want to make sure we have plans in place, we have agreements ahead of time so it's clean when we go through it. Updating our vendor lists and things like that. We also looked at need. Right now we're using some borrowed computers from San Mateo County. They were surplus ones because we didn't have any that worked. And so I put in a request for some computers that be faster and more appropriate for our use. So I'm sure you'll be seeing that come before you. Identifies points of distribution. In such scenarios like this, we're going to be pushing out water, food, whatever it might be, medications, whatever it might be. And to do that, have personnel come through. We need a place where people can funnel through to get this in organized manner. That's one of the things we discussed during the exercise, with Public Works and something, how we're going to do that and where we're going to do that. So you have to identify those ahead of time so you lay those plans out. So it was good things to really get that conversation going. What are the best places to do it? And we find out many times we had them, but then you wait 10 years later, that plan doesn't work because we built differently or moved streets or whatever it might be. So that's something we have to look at on a regular basis. And certainly we're looking at doing more exercise to maintain those skills as we go along. There's other things we came in, got a lot of information in our hot wash and our after action stuff, so we'll put those together. But initially, those are things we're looking at. And with that, we had 24 city staff participate that morning, 20 Millbrae CERT volunteers, which was quite well done. I asked 2 controller evaluators to come in and help us with this, and I got all the information from them as well. If you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. Vice Mayor Lee?
Thank you. I'm curious, how did the room, how did it perform for the exercise? And also, was the emergency generators turned on just to check to make sure that there was, uninterrupted power to that room? Yeah,
well, I'll answer that backwards. First, the emergency generator is tested weekly, so we know it's always up in speed. So we're in good shape there, and we do that on a regular basis. As far as the room functioning, everything, all the technology worked well. You had phones that worked well, and all the new wiring and investment we put in there, I think, is paying off. Getting comfortable with it, we had a setup, and I asked everyone, are they comfortable the way it was? And I think as we exercise, we're going to see we might change our setup a little bit differently. But initially, that was okay. I think we had requests. We need bigger maps. We need, some of the things that we're looking at that they're more comfortable with. But it did function fine. And I'll be very honest, I was quite intrigued to watch, especially in the planning and logistics aspect, how they were tracking things. And one of the things we brought forward, well, what if we didn't have power? What if we couldn't use Web EOC to identify that? And they started posting it. And I think in one of the pictures you saw the charts, and they had it all listed and color-coded. Which was very serious, some that weren't, and, time sensitive and so on. So it was good. It was good, a good opportunity for the staff to see it and to play with it, and how they can invest their time and experience into it. That really improves it. And that's what these exercises are about, is to be able at time to step in and do it and get comfortable with it. And we have a lot of expertise throughout the city, and to bring that in and to be able to apply that really works well.
So for the public, we need to know that our emergency operations center right now is the Jacudi Center. We anticipate and we hope that the new recreational facility will operate even more so in the future. But right now, should an emergency occur, the Jacudi Center will be our emergency operations center. Now, we've had a specific crisis, and that was actually the fire at the recreation center. I will say one of the problems we had at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, was alerting people. So we were scrambling around for signage. I don't know if you had this at your drill here, but actually poster board or anything that we can put out in the area to give people information is key. And it was primitive, but we were trying very hard to let people know if you had childcare at the recreation center, you need to make alternative plans. So we've kind of been tested 2 years ago with this fire, and sometimes it becomes very basic. So I wonder if you had any such materials around, because we were really scrambling to find.
There's a number of things that come up to place, and that's the exercises and the experience, and thank you for bringing that up. Experience with disasters are certainly where we learn quite a bit, too. The signage, as far as depending upon if it's going to be a long-term thing, signboards, the things that we have, they are available and we can get those. And, those are not, Public Works works with those types of things all the time. And one of the things that we do with these drills, with these exercises, is being able to work interdiscipline. The police, fire, and Public Works working together to gain an appreciation for what each one can do. And I know my experience throughout the years that I was in the fire service, I gained a great deal of appreciation for Public Works. They have a lot of tools and they do a lot of good stuff. And we always underutilize that in the past. And I think we've learned from that and we get them forward. They're great at moving people around as far as traffic goes because they really know how to do it well. Signage, being able to get information out in that form, they're very good at it. As far as moving people, that's what recreation is very good at, and they know how to do that on a different scale. So I think that's where we take our resources and expand that. What we need specifically as far as signage, sometimes we may not have, but we can get, and that's what the logistics function is all about. But it's a good point to bring up, and we can move with that as well.
Yeah, so future, if you could have those, any sort of signage and some big felt markers right on site, it's very helpful. My question is, in your scenario, is the hospital open for business? Are we to, I think at least, how many council members have taken CERT? Okay, we got 3. The other 2 need to work on it. So in such a scenario, would the hospital be open?
In this scenario, the hospital was functioning at a limited level. And we had it down, I think they were down to 100 beds or something like that. And I forget the exact scenario. What they do is, one of the things that first happens in scenarios, in a real disaster, is they do a polling. And we know where our medical resources are and at what level they're at and where we can send people or where we cannot. And that's the other thing. We have to triage to find out, what level is, how difficult it may be to get people to where they need to go and how we will get them there, especially in an area-wide disaster like that. And sometimes it's really difficult to grasp, but when we have a disaster like that, we're not going to be able to respond like we normally do. So it's not, expect to have somebody there in 3 minutes and be to the hospital in 10. It's not going to happen. But what we can do through triage is do the best we can to save the most people. And those who have taken CERT certainly understand that aspect. You do the most good for the most people. So.
Okay, so I hope you'll give the CERT information when we conclude this part. I would love to see more participation by the interfaith organizations within our city. I am hoping to gather our various interfaith leaders in our community so that we can really bring them together as well, should such an emergency occur, because I do think that's important.
Absolutely, because, they're the ones that do step up.
And the school district...
If we can organize ahead of time, it makes it more efficient.
Right, and as Councilmember Holliber mentioned, the school district does preparation as well. Yeah,
we are, in fact, we're currently working with the school districts, so we have to update their shelter plans. We have identified the schools or shelters. They are limited in their ability to shelter, though, by numbers and what they can do. The Mills High School is probably the best shelter we have. The Taylor School, the new building there, is pretty good. It's a lot better than it was. But other than that, we're very limited to what we can do at the other schools. And they're more of an evacuation center type operation that would run at schools like that, where we can bring people together to find out what their needs are, and then be able to send them someplace more permanent. And I think, you asked me, that's the other thing in this shelter operation we found in this exercise on a county-wide basis, is you have to really look towards bigger facilities that can handle the people to be able to feed them well. The more shelters you have, the more difficult it is to get things out to them. If you can imagine that, there's more places that we have to deal with. And that's one of the things we're learning through the entire area, is how we can best do that. We had a lot of information come out of Sonoma and Napa. They had some 49 shelters going at one time. It was just horrendous trying to support that. So as you bring those down, try to streamline it better to be able to provide what the people need.
So we've been tested with our own fire, with San Bruno's fire. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, our interim city manager actually lives in the city of Millbrae.
So we're lucky in that realm. I do foresee a future alteration to your plan there in that Orchard Supply is leaving, and I know that was a resource
Certainly will.
for us. So we're going to have to make alterations to that because we were hoping to just run over there and tap into whatever they had.
Well, one of the things we discussed with finance, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So, I mean, you can't just have one place to get it from. And we looked at multiple resources, or locations to get things. And and at the same time, you have to remember we have to look at this ahead of time. That we're going to be wherever it is getting impacted by a lot of different agencies, and that's why working together cooperatively is so important. And we could set up our priorities region wide. Who's worse shape than those we get the resources first.
And we are hopeful that our future recreation center will be even better for you. Ms. Schneider?
A couple of questions. So you said that Mills is probably our best shelter. Does that mean the city of Millbrae has an agreement with Mills, or does that mean the American Red Cross has the agreement with Mills?
American Red Cross.
Okay, so really what we're doing for shelters is through the American Red Cross. The American Red Cross typically has cots, bedding materials, and other materials around the county. I don't want to tell them because they were stolen a number of years ago, but they're usually put in containers and located around the country. But the plan for the new rec center is for it to be one of our permanent shelters and to have shelter equipment stored on site. Is that correct?
So the rec center will be an emergency evacuation center.
Okay, so it wouldn't have the bedding materials, for example. We'd still be liaisoning with the Red Cross. Okay. Other question then. The other problem with multiple shelters, since I've worked those, is the more shelters you have, the more difficulty it is for family members to find each other. Did you at all work on the system for helping family members find each other?
Reunification, yes. Reunification is a primary aspect of sheltering and evacuation centers. And the city manager mentioned evacuation centers. And we try to get people into that to get the documentation down so we know where they are and where they're going. And that's really difficult sometimes because during, San Bruno, for instance, that event, people that were so traumatized, they tend to go where they feel most comfortable as soon as they can. And if they leave the area, go to family, friends, and there's no accountability there, we can't. It's hard to tell them where they went. So that's we try to get that in place early on in disasters, is to have some local place close by where we can set up an evacuation center that we will take them in, get their information, and send them to where they need help. Or if they're going to go on there, at least we know where they are and we have a contact number. So if family members come, we can reunify that. And that is also one of the aspects of the sheltering operation, is to do that, have that documentation. We look at that, and it's one. We have a countywide emergency managers association, and one of the subcommittees is sheltering and care, and that's one of the primary things they look at.
Number one for the public walking out there is all of us should have a plan that we have a point of contact with family or a friend outside of the disaster area. So for my family, our call-in is Seattle. So any of the cousins around the country or in Canada know to call Seattle if something happens here. And believe it or not, in the gas explosion, we heard from people, friends in England, that knew we were really close by. And it took a couple of days to do that. So it's a really good idea. October is Disaster Preparedness Month, for all of you to make sure that you've worked on that one little thing that we never want to deal with because it's scary, of who you're going to call if something happens in any particular area. Last question, or just to build on the OSH question, the Red Cross provides cleanup kits and care kits. So they are another partner, at least in terms of your house falls down, but you're now ready to go back and clean up. The Red Cross will provide a cleanup kit, buckets, shovels, brooms, things like that. The Reunification Red Cross. This came up at the last Emergency Services Council meeting, City Manager. Do we have agreements with landfills and disaster debris cleanup companies with a preset contract amount? Because if buildings fall down, and I've seen this happen, you get some new businesses that come in, they're going to take away your concrete, they pile it up, they take your money, and then they're gone. So for at least since the Northridge earthquake, where this was really bad in Katrina, making sure that all cities have those preset contracts with a preset amount means we're not going to get taken by fly-by-night companies or by cities who are bigger than us who've already done that contract work. So it's a part of our disaster planning that we don't tend to remember to do.
Yeah, having local contracts, and a lot of that, the initial debris clearance has to do with getting our roadways open to people to move around and get back, to somewhat normalcy. When it gets the very large portion of it, when it gets area-wide disaster, that's when the engineers come in. We get from FEMA. Would come in, that's major contracts come with that aspect when it gets really big. But as you mentioned, if you don't have the early ones early on, the fly-by-nights will come in and they can clean your clock. And so having that set up ahead of time is certainly worthwhile. Normally, Public Works has those ancillary responsibility of, because they use them sometimes, when they're big jobs are beyond theirs, they'll contract some of the stuff out. And so we look at that, as well. So that's one of the things to keep in mind, and to bring up a good point is on a regular basis, think that through and to have those contract type, language available. So when they bring them in, we aren't going to get gouged.
Well, and the other thing to add then is FEMA came into Santa Rosa and they hired companies to do the hazardous materials remediation. They took a certain level of soil, but they left behind more hazardous materials. So I don't want to say you can't trust FEMA, but each disaster is a lesson learned. So we should be looking at those contracts and what happened up in Santa Rosa.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the lessons learned working with the Corps of Engineers. As you said, it's not always exactly to the level you want. And I think they've learned you have to ask a lot more questions and be more pointed on some of the things they do. So, good point.
And there are specific state laws that prevent gouging. You will be prosecuted during civil emergencies. Looting or any such things during civil unrest instantly becomes a felony. So I was in LA during the riots. These are things that people forget. And if Millbrae needs to update our laws, I know the state laws cover this, but don't get any ideas that this is a quick way to make a buck on some other people's tragedies. There are laws out there, and they will come crashing down. So if we want to update our own, we might want to look at that. But the state does cover a lot of that.
And that's what the proclamation of a disaster state of emergency does. It does a lot of that for us. So early on, that's why the way it's set up in California, the city manager can initially do that, and certainly council has to ratify that within 7 days. But being able to do that early on, really, that sets a stage for it. So then we're in good shape.
So, well, and Ms. Schneider, this is Bill Riley, okay? He keeps forgetting to introduce himself. He is our emergency services coordinator and has done a wonderful job and continued to work with us. And we thank you for all that you do for us. I know all the preparation in the world just is never enough, but it does give us a little bit of comfort to know things are happening.
Okay. Yeah, well, one of the things I keep in mind in disasters, people panic when there's no plan. If there's a plan and you have something to do, you tend not to panic because you take that deep breath. I know what I got to do. And that's why we really want to talk about it, exercise, and have a clear plan of what we're going to do.
And I think it's the time when people really realize the humanity of their neighbors and coming together as a community, which is so key. Okay. Ms. Schneider?
I forgot two other things. If you haven't already, this is an opportunity to sign up for SMC Alert. Just go to smc.alert.org and please put you and your family members on it. Also, today, the city's communication sent out an announcement that the Millbrae CERT program is starting their next training in January. But now that we're part of Central County, you can also participate in the Hillsborough training or the Burlingame training. So you can there are 3 training opportunities a year versus our once former a year. If you didn't get that in your email today about the CERT training for Millbrae, that's another really important place to sign up for in Millbrae so that you will find out what's going on in Millbrae. And I forgot what my last one was, but congratulations. I heard this from emergency services. It went really well. There had been a hospital drill just a few months before, so the hospitals were really treated at their max, and we're slowly but surely getting there, but thank you.
You're welcome. And I think you have on your desk a copy of Yeah, and if you have a chance to look through that, it really is very helpful and reminder. And we like to, as we say, we all need to take a look at it periodically to remember what our role is in a disaster. So, thank you very much.
So what he pointed out too, and we just held up, is the Elected Officials Guide to Managing Disasters, if there is such a thing. You never know about Mother Nature and all of that. But thank you so much, Bill, for all your hard work and effort. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, just real quick, I'd like to thank Bill also. Obviously, emergency preparation, preparedness, EOC training is a critical function of a local municipality, and our staff did a good job. As Bill mentioned, we still have some work to do, and we cannot train enough, and we do not take this lightly. But I'd like to thank Bill for his leadership, his experience, his knowledge. I mean, he's invaluable. He's been fantastic, so thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Moving on to agenda overview. Mr. Williams.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Pappen, members of the City Council, Tom Williams, Interim City Manager. So tonight's agenda, there is something that we've added to the agenda, and it's calendar of events. Under item 2, there's the October calendar, November calendar, and our objective here is to just have a 1-month look at all of the city meetings, city events, civic events, regional events that we participate in. And so we look forward to updating this, hearing from the council if we missed anything about meetings that we could add to it, but it just provides a nice quick look at what's happening, not only the current month, but the month following month. After that, we have our monthly report of bills and claims. Item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes. We have the meeting minutes of a continuation of our regular meeting that was scheduled for July 30th, 2018. We have the meeting minutes of our regular meeting scheduled October 9th, 2018. Item number 4 is oral reports from city committee and commission chairs. We have none this evening. Following that are public comments, where anybody from the public can speak 3 minutes on an item not on the agenda. Then moving to the consent calendar. Item number 5 on the consent calendar is the cancellation of our regularly scheduled city council meeting of December 25th, 2018. Item number 6, resolution amending the conflict of interest code. Item number 7, a resolution approving amendments to the records retention schedule. There are no public hearings this evening, and under existing business, we have 2 items. Item number 8 is an update to the Recreation Center restoration project. And item number 9 is consideration of adoption of a resolution approving an affordable housing regulatory agreement and declaration of restrictive covenants for the TOD 1 project. Under new business, there's one item, item number 10, and that's the adoption of the fiscal year 2018-19 Community Enhancement Advisory Committee Work Plan. And Mayor, that concludes the agenda. After council comments, we do move into a closed session on real property negotiations.
Okay, great. I'm going to insert something at this point in time. We had a very tragic incident occur in Millbrae involving the Sheriff's Department. And there was a tragic death of Mr. Chinyu Valentine Okobi. And we want to let the family know that they are in our thoughts and prayers. We as a council are all concerned about each and every law enforcement related death. Until we have further information related to what happened that tragic day, including the DA's findings, there really is no justice in commenting on an ongoing investigation or submitting any opinions on the actions of anyone involved that day. It is a tragedy. Our hearts go out to his family and loved ones. We will move on to approval of the minutes.
Madam Mayor, real quick.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Just a quick update
Yes.
on items of interest, if I may. I would like to bring Key Lim up for his monthly sewer modernization project and timeline along Broadway. We're a little bit ahead of schedule,
That's
so he
nice.
can answer some questions and bring everybody up to date on where we're headed.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and member of the City Council. I was here in front of you 2 weeks ago talking about the sewer project on Broadway. So we had completed the first block, which is on Broadway between Taylor and Hillcrest. We had put in about 500 feet of sewer main line and reconnected about 27 sewer laterals on that block. And we had started on the second block on Broadway yesterday, which is the block between Hillcrest and La Cruz. And today we had put in about 400 feet of main line. And we're going to be spending the next week and a half reconnecting the lateral. And then after that, we should be moving on to the last block.
Having driven on that street, it's very irregular at this point in time. So we appreciate your being ahead of schedule. We are, of course, just concerned for the businesses that you maintain the schedule and that they can count on your schedule. If you're early, that's fine, but their daily operations are extremely important.
Yes, noted. And one thing that we are planning to do, we are going to be looking at the street condition and come and either do a micro-surfacing or some type of treatment to make it look a lot nicer than what it is now.
Very bumpy right now.
Smoother.
But thank you very much. Greatly appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, but Ms. Schneider has a comment. So
On the minutes for October 9th, there's a section where under report outs, council comments, where it says staff is supposed to respond to airport noise issues. No, it's the elected official who is the representative to the airport roundtable that is supposed to be getting back to staff. Okay. Because unless we've hired a new staff person, we don't have a staff person that does airport noise issues. And that's what I said. So if we just clean that part up.
Okay.
And probably a good time to note that Congresswoman Spear is having an event this evening on airport noise.
Yes, on the same night that both we and San Bruno had their council meetings.
But I'm sure we'll get the response to that. So we who live in this area know how sensitive that can be. Okay, so no changes to the minutes?
With that exception.
Yes, of course. Now, Ms. Holliber, do you accept that? I mean, Ms. Oliva, do you accept that amendment?
I accept it.
Okay, Mr. Holliber? Yes. Okay, given that, your votes, please.
The minutes passed unanimously with the change called out by Councilmember Schneider to the October 9th minutes.
Okay, moving on to public comment. This is the time in the agenda where the public can comment on items not currently on the agenda. This is a time when people speak. This is not necessarily endorsed by the council or related to council agenda. Please look at the little monitor up there. You have 3 minutes. Our first person is Chris Del Rosa. Good evening, Mr. De Rosa.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Chris DeRosa. I'm a first responder and a resident of the Landing Lane neighborhood. This is more about the FEMA CRS program, which is the Community Rating System program in the flooding areas of Millbrae. In the past, I've met with the interim DPW Director, Cyrus Kianpour, 3 or 4 times in sit-down group meetings in June, July, and August of 2017. Keelan was also present at least one, if not more times. I was able also to pull together a multi-jurisdictional meeting with the City of Millbrae, SFO, and Caltrain all at one table. In 2013, I began talking to Key Lim about this program, which he personally told me a study had been started and never finished. I've also addressed this in several council meetings in the past. The original plan we came up with was 3 things: a now plan as to what the city's doing now to mitigate flooding and coordinating with other jurisdictions; 2, an intermediate plan; and 3, an infrastructure plan, such as the FEMA CRS program, which helps mitigate flooding according to FEMA guidelines, which can take up to a year to compile and get a rating. I've asked City Council to see if we can get a meeting with city managers, and City Council has asked. I know city managers are busy, but if they can make some time, I'd be very interested in a meeting before winter really begins, rain begins to fall, and flooding, again, may become a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And your timing is good. Mr. Williams, I'm going to hand you Mr. DeRosa's contact information and also this letter from the Emergency Management FEMA people regarding the flood areas in Millbrae. Thank you. Second comment, Ryan Loesch.
Hello, Council. My name is Ryan Loesch.
Thank you.
You introduced me. Thank you, Mayor, for introducing me. Wanted to talk about discussions that have been happening on Nextdoor. That's an app. If the people in Millbrae don't know what that is, I highly recommend that you download it and become a part of the discussion. It's a great way for you to engage in what's happening in the city, especially that these meetings only take place a couple times a week. A couple times a month. So it's a great way for everyone to get involved. And there's a couple topics that have been being discussed on Nextdoor over the last couple weeks. The first one being Measure II, the new rec center.
Mayor, that's on the agenda this evening.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. You have other things to talk about, I'm sure.
I do.
So if you could avoid that one, we'd appreciate it.
Avoid that one, but
And come back.
Anyway, you're able to do these polls on Nextdoor now, and it's great because it allows some transparency into what people are thinking about prior to the vote. I placed a couple polls myself, and the results, close to 200 people have chimed in, and even though that's a small sample set of the overall voters that are going to be taking place in the next couple of weeks here, it's it's really insightful when you take a look at that. Anyway, the other question I have, there's been a lot of talk on a particular subject, and I just wanted to get it cleared out. And Councilmember Oliva, this is directed for you. I really just want to know what's been going on. I know that you had weighed in with an apology and a clarification that was removed within 24 hours of you posting it. Anyway, it's just I want to know what the business misconduct was. People are talking about fraudulent behavior. I would love for you to clear the air on this if you can. I think that everyone in Millbrae would like to understand exactly what transpired in July when those court claims were made. So if you have time, please, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's the final comment. We will note that the findings that Ryan says here were not so. The comments made in a context, and the statements that he just asserted were not the findings of the real estate board. So a lot of things get taken out of context, and I'm sure Councilmember Oliva will happy to talk to you about that later, but no such findings. So we will be clear on that. We have one more here.
Mayor, real quick, if I may.
Yes.
I think it's also important to note that these surveys that are found on Nextdoor are not city surveys. They're not sanctioned by the city. They're not reviewed by the city. So if anybody thinks that the city has anything to do with it, we do not. So I think that's important to note.
Yes. And please note, too, I know that certain residents have gotten SurveyMonkey surveys recently. Those are not put on by the city of Millbrae. It's an unidentified group that's doing that. So we have nothing to do with those SurveyMonkey things that certain voters are getting. Please note, they are not sanctioned by the city of Millbrae, nor do they involve the city of Millbrae. It's a group with no ties to Millbrae that we know of. Okay, we have one more comment here. Rafael Lopez. Good evening. I'm sorry, was there? Okay, they can do that. Good evening, Mr. Lopez.
Hi, yes, Rafael Lopez, 485 Lincoln Circle. I was wondering, is there a idea or a plan of what the city's going to do once the new housing development is being built next to BART. Reason why I'm asking this is because I've noticed that the traffic on Millbrae Avenue heading west, when you cross El Camino, it's really congested, and I think there's not enough right turn lanes when you make when you're going down the bridge.
Millbrae Avenue.
Millbrae Avenue, correct. And for example, this evening, my girlfriend, I picked up my girlfriend from BART this evening, and we were going over the bridge, and I noticed that there's 2 lanes going straight, and rarely does the lane on the left go straight. What they do is they race you up Millbrae Avenue, like you're going up the hill, and they want to get in front of you so they can go either straight or right. Because if you go straight like you're supposed to, you're forced to make the left turn, and nobody, hardly, rarely, of all the years I lived here, ever made the left turn. And what they're doing is they're racing you up that hill. And it seems to me that some of their nicer cars, the more expensive cars, they think they have a better or more right of way than you do in your little Toyota Camry. So I just want to know if does the city have a plan in place? What's going to happen when we have all these people living there? And what's going to happen when people cross the street? And what are the rules for the lights? And what are the rules for pedestrians when they cross the street? Are people going to just lay on their horns because you're not making the right turn because someone hasn't finished crossing the street? Or is the law say that you can stop at the medium and then go? It's very vague, and it's kind of a gray area of what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. If any of you can spend time on that bridge on a lawn chair and just watch the traffic, and you realize that it's bad. I mean, it goes from the stoplight all the way to the freeway exit, especially during rush hour. And just imagine when all those people live there, what's going to happen? How are we going to get through? We need a study. We need a really good study. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The studies have shown this is an F already, the traffic in that area. Mr. Lopez, the traffic in that area has already been rated an F. The traffic plan to date includes a second right-hand turn there, going north on El Camino. That involves Caltrans, which is the state agency. So we are working with them, public safety in crossing, just so everyone's clear on the law. The moment somebody steps into the crosswalk, you are to stop. The pedestrian has the right-of-way. So do not think you can go around. So we just want to be clear on that. There is a plan, and it deals with Caltrans. And we are quite aware, and I take that every day. I'm with you on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have one more group discussion from, looks like, Mills High School. Gentlemen, if you could say your names when you approach there. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Brian.
My name's Nicholas.
My name's Kiefer.
My name's Cedric.
Yeah, so as you know, we're Mills High School students, and we're concerned about plastic consumption in the city and what ways in which we as a community can reduce our impact on the environment.
So we did some research in Millbrae legislation, and we discovered that Ordinance 742, stating that it is the city's desire, whenever possible, to conserve natural resources and to increase the quality of life for Millbrae residents.
So in 2012, Millbrae imposed a minimum 10-cent charge on plastic bag and banned the use of 100% plastic bags, replacing them with recycled and partial plastic bags.
6 years later, we as students and local citizens believe that more environmental laws could be passed in order to keep up with changing times, and we have a few possible solutions to this. We were wondering if we could increase the cost of plastic bags from the minimum of 10 cents to possibly 25 cents to $1. The ideal is to get rid of plastic bags, but we were already acknowledged by several businesses, of course, that plastic bags are a necessity and we have to rely on them. And with supply and demand, with an increase in price, there should be less demand in consumers.
And then another way that we figured out was that we could increase public awareness by possibly putting up signs or even giving reminders to people. And we conducted a survey last week by going to local shops touring around Millbrae, and we determined the cost. We found out the cost and appearance of the plastic bags. So then what we found was that we went to Safeway, and that was the only corporation that claimed that they had a biodegradable bag, whereas other businesses had only 20% recycled plastic bags. And also many of these reusable plastic bags can mix up with its older counterpart, which is the non-renewable version.
So thank you for listening to our concerns, but now we'd like to ask you if our idea is feasible at all.
Your idea is very feasible. We are interested in your survey, and I do believe that our ordinance increases the cost to 25 cents, does it not? I think it went from 10 to...
No, I think it's up to 25 cents.
Well, as the years pass, it's supposed to increase. But we are interested in your survey, gentlemen, if you would mind sharing it with us. And we greatly appreciate your being here tonight.
And I believe, gentlemen, you are meeting with Shelley Ryder, correct, from the city. Yeah. So, yeah, good. So they'll be working with Shelley.
Okay. Nice job.
Good job, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Where's my agenda here? Excuse me. I lost it. Consent calendar. We have item 5, 6, 7, and that's it. Do we have any questions? Okay, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Lee, a second by Ms. Oliva. Your votes, please, on the consent calendar.
Items 5, 6, and 7 on the consent calendar passed unanimously.
Okay, no public hearings. Moving on to existing business. Item 8, Recreation Center Restoration Project informational update. McKinsey, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Mackenzie Brady, Recreation Director, and I'd like to give you a briefing on the Recreation Center Restoration Project. As you are aware, Group 4 is currently synthesizing all of the input from our community members, from you all, the City Council, and the Parks and Recreation Commission as well, on the conceptual design options involving the offset gable, split gable, and porch options. So since they're currently putting all of that together, they will be presenting that to the Project Advisory Committee prior to the December 4th joint City Council and Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, when the recommendations will be presented to you all at that time. And by mid-December, hopefully you all will consider recommendations and provide direction to the completion of the conceptual design. And by the end of the year, Group 4 will have finalized all of the documents and work products for the conceptual design. And most recently, city staff produced a fact sheet on Measure II. And this was mailed to all households in Millbrae. It was also produced in Chinese, and that is available at all city counters and online for viewing. And Measure II is a local ballot measure that needs 2/3 voter approval to pass. And if it does pass, the cost for homeowners will be no more than $8.70 per $100,000 of assessed value. That's assessed value, not appraised value. This will cost...
Please hold on.
Not market value, so assessed.
Correct. Yeah.
Go ahead.
This will cost the average Millbrae homeowner no more than $65. And just to reiterate the important information about Measure II and restoring the Millbrae Recreation Center, I would like to read to you the fact sheet that was sent to all Millbrae residents. And excuse me, this is verbatim. A Millbrae Recreation Center restoration measure would provide an accessible, modern community center that meets current earthquake, electrical, and fire safety codes and will serve as an emergency evacuation center. 1 in 5 Millbrae residents is 65 or older, and thousands used recreation programs and classes like quilting, aerobics, painting, tai chi, mahjong, and other games before a fire destroyed the Millbrae Recreation Center. A Millbrae Recreation Center restoration measure would restore the Millbrae Recreation Center and provide a quiet, dedicated place where our seniors can engage in the social and physical activities that keep them healthy. The old center served thousands of children and youth, and a Millbrae Recreation Center measure would restore a safe place for our children and families to play during out-of-school time. Restoration of the Millbrae Recreation Center will also provide space for preschool programs and after-school tutoring programs in core subjects like math, science, and language. This measure would include strict fiscal accountability requirements, including financial audits and citizen oversight to ensure the funding is spent only on restoring the recreation center. This restoration measure would issue $12 million in bonds. Like I said, that'd be no more than $8.70 per $100,000 of assessed value, which would raise approximately $750,000 annually while bonds are outstanding. Just a reminder that Measure II is on the local ballot for this November election.
To clarify one statement you made, some residents will be paying over the $65 amount that you mentioned.
Correct.
So if their assessed value is close to $1 million, again, divide by your $100,000, so it would be slightly above that.
$87, yes.
Some close to the realm. But the math is, on your tax bill, you'll see the assessed value. Divide by 100,000 and then times that by $8.70. So we want to be very clear as to what the residents are looking at. I know this is somewhat confusing. It's Measure II, not Measure 11, not Measure 2. So the county gives out these letters, and this is what the city of Millbrae was given. Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor Lee.
Thank you for your presentation. So some residents have been asking, well, why don't we just use the insurance money to build the facility, just rebuild the facility?
So the facility, the recreation center, was insured for its maximum value, and the funds that we did receive from the insurance company was approximately $6.4 million. Tom? Yes, $6.4 million from the insurance proceeds.
And to clarify, there's a Q&A sheet, I believe, on the city's website. So to be clear, the prior building was built in 1974, I believe.
Correct.
Pardon me?
69.
69? Wow, I'm way off. Excuse me, 1969. And that was for a much less population for the city of Millbrae.
About 15,000 people.
15,000 less residents. In addition,
Total.
15,000 residents.
15,000
residents at that time. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're well beyond that. So the rebuild under the insurance money would only be the exact building we had before with current code compliance. The proposed building now, the restoration building, would not only be up to code, but would also be sustainable and cost less to operate and maintain, in addition to accommodating a larger population and a future population. So very important aspect. Yes, Ms. Schneider?
And it's my understanding, as a Lion, and Millbrae Lions like to cook, the old rec center, you couldn't do real cooking. You could warm things up. Maybe you could make soup. But the new kitchen, you can cook, which means we can rent it for more operations, which means we can get a return on the investment.
As you can see from behind me, the new facility would include a commercial kitchen that would be available for rental.
And given how it's really hard, people of Millbrae, to find places to have events, to have banquets. Green Hills is very, very expensive. This is an actual big benefit back to the city, having this particular facility. And then having just attended an event with Congresswoman Jackie Spear talking about all cities should be looking at all developer agreements, and they should all be including childcare. That childcare, second to the cost of rent or your mortgage, childcare is your next biggest cost. So having childcare, and this is going to have childcare. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, so currently we have what's called early childhood recreation, and we can't call it preschool because of the amount of time that we have the children, and we're not a licensed facility. And so this new facility would have preschool, a licensed preschool facility for up to 48 children, so 2 different classrooms. And the hope would be that we would find another operator to operate this facility.
And that there's a possibility, maybe, that we can get some grant funding from the county who are currently trying to develop more childcare. So it's not, the city is still looking for additional revenue streams to help construct the building.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Holliber?
Thank you. And it's also my understanding that the annual payments will decrease a little bit year by year. I see Mr. Musi is in the audience. So, as TOD1 and TOD2 are developed, and as houses turn over in Millbrae, the total assessed value of all of Millbrae will increase, which would and the debt service payments stay the same year to year. So, those who are here now, who plan to be here for a long time, would see reductions over time, gradually. Over time. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And we'd also like to point out, too, that this cost also has built-in, what do you call them, buffers or something? So it anticipates whether the interest rate, contingencies, built-in contingencies. So should the interest rates go up between now and the time, hopefully, that we are able to break ground, that's all calculated within this current figure, and this is what we are
Correct.
Planning for.
And it was budgeted based on the midpoint of construction, I believe, which would be, he's not looking. Wait, October 2020, I believe, is when the midpoint of construction.
Right, you're correct. Yeah,
that's what
$20 inflated
dollars and all of that.
Correct.
So
this is the absolute max that the project would cost.
Okay. Yes, Vice Mayor Lee?
Yeah, I think I like this project because it has ample room for our seniors, and our seniors really desperately need the space. They need a place to meet, and we now have the Self-Help for Elderly program, which feeds seniors once a week. And that's a good program, and we'd like to be able to house them and also have an opportunity to expand the program to include more seniors. So this is going to benefit our largest segments of populations, which is our seniors and our kids. And I think that that's something that we desperately need, and we need to really support this. There was one other question I can't remember. Go.
This is an informational send to let us know where we are in the process. The City Council has unanimously supported the restoration, and this is McKinsey's here to update us on that. Yes, Ms. Oliva.
Additionally, in a separate update, maybe not necessarily a formal update, it would be kind of good information to know what we could generate by abling to rent out that room for weddings or Lions Club facility parties. Like, what would it rent for, and how often do you foresee that we could rent it out? And so that we can see what something that we've never had is a income generating facility.
Yes.
And also with regards to the preschool as well, if in fact that was to be rented out by a third party to run that, if we would charge rents, and we'd also be able to generate some income from that as well.
Yes, so all of that is definitely being considered right now, and Group 4 is working with Ken Ballard right now, and he is evaluating the operational costs for this new facility, including what we would be potentially renting all of the facilities for, and what different options for the revenue generation for the preschool as well.
Because that's something that we didn't have in our last facility as well. We weren't able to maintain it. It was somewhat of a deep pocket for the city, and if we could show some sort of numbers to get out there that we can present to people to see what that would look like, that would be very good for us as well.
Okay.
Again, this is simply an update of should the voters approve this measure. We hope to break ground next year, where we will get into all the details there and we as a council are hopeful. Ms. Schneider, you had a comment.
I actually, over the weekend, was trying to find on our website where the Q&As were, and I couldn't find it easily. I Google searched it, and it sent me to our Facebook page. So I think maybe we can do a little bit better job of getting that information. I know, Mayor, you sent out a list of responses to the questions that have been coming in, so thank you to the public for sending in your questions and concerns. Give us the opportunity, or staff the opportunity, to get back with those. Park and Rec Commissioner Del Negro just entered the City Council here, and he met with me over the weekend and gave me much more information on it. One of the things I've heard from some of the public is, why are we building such a fancy, great building? Well, so I went and compared room to the old one, and it really, yes, it's a new building. Yes, it's brought up to code. Yes, it's going to be cheaper to operate because the new practices, the new state-of-the-art buildings means it's going to operate much cheaper on that. And so those are some of the advantages. There are a couple of additional rooms like the child care, the bigger full kitchen, and I know a lot of our adults here make use of the dance room. So whether it's jazzercise or some of the other dance classes, when I was out meeting people, that was their biggest concern. Where was Zumba going to be after the rec center burnt down? And we're grateful for the church that offered up their space, and I think it's back at the new Temp Rec Center now.
It is not. Our space is not big enough.
So we really need that dance room, and that's one of the new rooms in the facility. So if you've got concerns out there, please let us know so that we can try to get you the right answer.
Okay. Vice Mayor Lee.
Yeah, I do have, I remember now. So the difference, so people have been asking about the difference. We're only asking for, was it $12 million, right?
Oh, the financial.
The financial part.
Funding.
So there is no decisions in how we're going to make up, right? And I know there was proposal to sell property, but that's not really, that's just a proposal, and it's not set in stone or decided upon. So
I'm gonna clarify for you here.
Thank you.
The funding process, that we have $2.88 million in developer contributions. Should the voters approve Measure II, it would be a $12 million plus to the funding process. The city had $6.4 million in insurance funding. And in addition to that, the city has $8.65 million in surplus assets, which we will be looking at for the final portion of the funding for this process. Yes, Ms. Schneider?
And can you clarify, because several months ago we talked about Schultz Park, but what is the current situation with Schultz Park?
Well, let me clarify as well. When we're talking about surplus assets, Schultz Park was only one aspect of it. And we are defining that right now, but the public would be a part of that process as well, because it has not been subdivided. The other two parcels are subdivided of the surplus process. So I think Schultz Park has been valued at what?
Approximately $3.5 million to $4 million.
$3.5 million. So that would also involve the public, as far as we know. The public would have to be a part of that process.
Yeah, to dispose of Schultz Park, it would require a vote of the citizens. But as the mayor said, there are other parcels that are also surplus to our needs that we could sell.
Can we clarify tonight that Schultz Park is off the table in terms of the funding for the rec center?
No, not at all.
Okay. I thought I had heard. That's the problem with rumors out there. I thought I had heard that Schultz Park was off the table. My apologies.
No, and let me clarify for the public as well. Schultz Park is located near Taylor Middle School. It was donated by the Schultz family prior to the city of Millbrae's incorporation.
1939, I believe.
1939. Looking around, I don't think anybody was actually there at that point in time. We are grateful to the Schultz family. Nothing has been done with this property since that time. Therefore, it is considered surplus property and is being evaluated as to what the subdivisions would look at. There's also been discussions about making whatever subdivisions are incorporated, also including a park in that area, and also maintaining the Schultz name because of the generous donation from the Schultz family. Okay? Yes, Vice Mayor Lee.
One last question. People are also asking why $30 million facility, and I think that the reason why is because we did we had many outreaches to all our citizens, and the people who attended, this is what they wanted. They wanted this type of facility, and it's going to cost $30 million. Am I correct?
Well, to sum up there, again, we are looking at an increased population that needs to be accommodated by a current facility. We are trying to, as the public has given us their input, also include a building that would be highly sustainable and less to maintain in the long run. So these are all factors that are included in the proposed restoration of the center. So you are looking at a improved facility for in the long term would include this population, future population, and the operations of the city of Millbrae. It has been 2 years since the last center burnt down. The current temporary facility is just that, a temporary facility. It does not last, more than 10 years or something like that. That was separate funding. So, yeah, some people are like, the temporary is just fine. No, it is temporary. So this is a proposed restoration that will positively impact the residents and visitors to Millbrae for decades to come. So we appreciate everyone's involvement in the process and the updates. It's not really realistic just to say, put up the old building because, as you said, the population at that point was 15,000. Our current population is what, 23,000?
22.
Close to 23, I think, at this point.
Rounded up 23 and growing with some of the new developments in El Camino.
So it's not really reasonable to assume. And as Ms. Schneider pointed out, this is not a grandiose proposal. This is something I believe the council has agreed and the community has given their input on, that this is a restored asset that is important to the community. So we
Zumba happening.
Keep Zumba happening, as Ms. Schneider said. So this is still in the process. Should the voters approve Measure II, we would be able to break ground next year, which I think people would be excited about. And we will continue to update the public on this process. Any more questions? Thank you. We appreciate your time. And again, we will update the website. You can see the various aspects here. Thank you, Ms. Schneider, for pointing out that the Q&A is difficult to find. We want that to be informational to anyone who needs the information. Okay, next item. Adoption of a resolution approving affordable housing regional agreement and declaration restriction covenants.
So,
Hello.
Mayor, if I may, some of you have met Brad Meisner and some of you have not. Brad is an AICP, which is the American Institute of Certified Planners. He has more than 20 years of experience at the department head level in community development. Really, I like to explain his claim to fame is 17 years in the city of Santa Monica in land development planning. So I'd like to welcome Brad Meisner. He's with CSG and has stepped in to help us out.
Having lived in Santa Monica, I didn't see that much development going on, but go ahead.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Wait, that was
It's beautiful, yes, but go ahead.
Thank
Welcome,
you, Mayor
Brad.
and Vice Mayor, and fellow council members. As your city manager mentioned, my name is Brad Meisner, and I am a consulting urban planner with CSG Consultants, contracted to the city of Millbrae to help you with your planning services. So this evening, I'm here to speak to you about item 9, which is the regulatory agreement for affordable housing that is stipulated within the development agreement for TOD1, otherwise known as Millbrae Sarah Station. Just quickly, in terms of project overview, as the council is aware, this is a 3.6 acre site on the west side of the Millbrae Intermodal Station, east side of El Camino Real. The project, sorry. There we go. The project involves 3 mixed-use buildings. Building R1, it's a 10-story building with 119 apartments. Building R2 is a 10-story residential building containing 325 apartments. And then building C1, which is a 9-story building with with 290,140 square feet of office space. There's also, in the staff report, there was some data about the amount of retail space. I've come to realize since the time of the staff report that that number had been increased back in April 24th. I think there's some clarification that that retail space is upwards of 35,000 square feet as a project as a whole. Back in April 24th, the Council adopted Resolution 1824, finding that the environmental impact report for the proposed project was adequate for review. Council also adopted the Ordinance 768, which is the development agreement, and that DA stipulated that the affordable housing pursuant to the terms of a regulatory agreement would be negotiated by and between the City of Millbrae and the developer. So that's what we're here tonight to discuss. There are 440 residences in the development, 66 of which, or 15%, would be available for below market rate households. Within the regulatory agreement, in the first building in R1, of the 119 homes that are there, 17 of which would be below market rate units. 11 units would be dedicated towards low or lower income households, where their household income could not be greater than 80% of the average median income. 6 units would be dedicated to moderate level income households, where their incomes could be no greater than 80% and could not exceed no greater than 80% and not exceed 120% of EMI. All those 17 units would be restricted for a period of 55 years, commencing upon the date of the first inclusionary unit certificate of occupancy. In the event that any of these units became owner-occupied upon the sale, that 55-year term would reset. And that's consistent with the city's housing element, specifically policy H3.8. For building R2, which there are 325 homes there, the breakdown would be 33 units for lower income households, 16 units devoted to moderate income level households. For those 49 units, they'd be again restricted for a period of 55 years as well. And that time period would commence upon the date of the certificate of occupancy for the building as a whole. And again, upon any situation where there would become owner occupied units, then upon resale, the 55-year term would reset. With that, city staff and the city attorney have negotiated the terms of the regulatory agreement. You have the full regulatory agreement before you. It's attachment 2. It is the recommendation that the council consider for adoption a resolution approving the affordable housing regulatory agreement. And it's also the declaration of restrictive covenant for Millbrae Sarah Station. And with that, I'll gladly take any questions that you have.
And Mayor, if I may, we received an updated copy, red line edition, that we would like to pass out now from the city attorney. It's just formatting. There's nothing substantive, just some changes of numbers and some wording, but no substantive changes.
Changes of numbers I find substantive. Should we be looking in any particular place? Yeah, Ms. Schneider, did you have a question?
Well, I had 2 questions. One, I think, is
numbering, I should say, not numbers. I apologize. Numbering of sections.
Numbering of sections, okay.
Yeah, no, I apologize. Yes.
Just to get clarification, the original number of units was 444, and then because of the 45-degree setback from 500 Hemlock, the number went down. But I understand that there's a new way of adjusting, of still keeping 444 units. Can you explain that to me?
I would have to defer to the project applicant for that.
Okay, that's great. And my second question, when I read through this, it talks about when a tenant either goes above or below the current low-income level that they are at, that they can stay in that unit as long as another unit of that value is freed up. And I just wonder how that realistically works. If we have the current housing market and people aren't moving much unless they get pushed out, how would that work? So just clarification on that point.
I don't offhand. I'd have to take a look at you're talking about provision 3.15.
My computer battery died, so I can't pull it up.
Okay.
I'd have to look for it, but it's somewhere. Would you like mine? No, I had it all marked off on the PDF. It's just a section where it talks about the changes in the tenant's personal annual income. And it sounds like Vince in the audience can answer that. I'm sure there's an answer. I just didn't know. It seems fairly tricky to monitor that, and there must be a couple of months that are going to
welcome Mr.
lag
Musi,
behind.
the applicant.
Vince Musi, and I guess I'm the developer of Millbrae Sarah Station. With regard to the question of the units and the number of units, the issue was that we could still accommodate the number, the 444. It's that the accommodating the setback changed on the upper floor the unit type. So instead of having 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, we've had to take them down to 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. So the unit number still works, and we could increase the size up to 488, and we do it as long as we do it within the envelope. If you remember, there's a 10% adjustment that's available, and that's going to depend a lot about how the numbers work for the construction. And then the second question you asked with regard to the affordable housing and how does it work when someone's income goes up. Basically, we have to wait. We can't. We have the rule is that we have to wait for an apartment to become available, and then designate that apartment as low income and move someone there. We can't move the person out of the unit that they're in just because their income went up. So, I mean, it's really, it affects the cash flow, not the residents. It isn't that we move somebody out. We just have to. We can't rent another at market unit until we find someone to take the below market unit. Okay. And then what was the other question?
Those were the two.
Okay.
So basically, since I'm voting on this tonight and I saw the 444, I just needed to know if that was still the number. But it sounds like there's also a little flexibility based on overall square footage, and we're all okay with that.
Yeah, we have to stay within the envelope. In other words, we can't nothing bigger. But we, instead of a 2-bedroom, we have 2 1-bedrooms. But it's all a factor of bathrooms and kitchens. Those are the big costs. Okay. Is there anything else with regard to this? Yeah.
Mr. Holliber.
Yes. One quick question, just for clarification. Is it 66 below BMR units or 67?
67.
Okay. Because when you add up each,
it should be 67.
Each building.
We had an argument about this, and
I'm aware.
lost the argument. So it's 67 units.
Because when you add up, the number in building R1 and the number in building R2, for each income level, you get to 66. There would be one additional unit in the mix somewhere.
It's something that should be corrected in the document. I don't know if it got corrected in the last.
I see 67 is in here, but when you add up, the number of medium income and number of low income in each unit, in each building you get to 66. But I'm sure it wouldn't be difficult to squeeze one more in some way.
Okay, it's at this point, no.
Right. And then, do you know at this point what the anticipated breakdown of rental units versus for sale units would be in the project, or is that not yet known?
No, I mean none of them are for sale. I mean, at this point, we will do a condominium act because that's what you do to protect the entitlement.
Okay.
But the project, as it's designed right now, is a rental project.
Okay, that's why this whole issue surprised me a bit, because I had never heard that there would be any for sale component of this project.
There always has been. I mean, I was asked at the Planning Commission. I think I was asked at the council if we would condominiumize, and I said that could happen, but it isn't the plan now.
Not the plan. Okay.
And because of liability issues, typically projects like this don't condominiumize until after 10 years, when it's called a period of repose. That is, if there's an issue with regard to construction or anything, that it usually gets resolved within the 10 years and the liability issues are resolved, and that's when they get converted. So, but you want to record the map at the same time because you do all the engineering, on construction, so you want to record a map because what you record is the air rights for each of the individual units. And once that's of record, then you have to go through the Department of Real Estate to actually create the right to sell the condominiums. But you do the engineering hopefully beforehand.
Great, thank you.
Vice Mayor Lee?
Many cities, how are these BMRs, how are they interspersed in the building? Are they all on one floor?
No,
or?
they're mixed through. What we've agreed to with the city is that we would provide on the first 4 floors of the building, so over half the building would be available to be below market, and then they have to be scattered through both buildings so that there is no identification, no separation, no distinguishing characteristic for the below market. The other characteristic that's different is that we would have in the finishes, because when you build units, you try to provide an advantage if someone wants additional, they want tile floor instead of linoleum, then they pay more for that, and so you adjust for that. But they all have to have, all of the, if someone runs a Miele dishwasher, or you want to put that into a unit to gain more rent, as long every unit has a dishwasher. It may be a GE in the BMR units or in the first 4 floors, but the upper floors with a view, you may enhance the finishes because you hope to rent for more. So.
Oh, okay. I'm a bit confused because if you're renting, I would think, I know certain units you probably would have maybe updated or whatever.
Yeah, you'd have, so you're going to try to, that's not my profession. There are professional people that will come in and design these as to what they think the market will attract the market and attract at market rates, the higher rates. So if we have a unit on the top floor with a great view, I've provided that they may have a fireplace. It may be an artificial one, but they'll have a fireplace. That isn't something that we can accommodate on the lower floors because we don't have stacks. So, that's something that could be different in the use, and it's provided for in the agreement. We negotiated that with the attorneys so that we provide for that.
So your question was, are they mixed throughout? And they are.
Well, I'd like to see a map of how they're interspersed percentage. I don't even know what the particular units are.
Well, nobody does that.
Nobody knows at this point.
I do know.
It's not required at this point. The city has agreed that they be mixed up through the first 4 floors. I don't think it's appropriate to ask for a map at this point in time.
It's 11-story.
But
10-story.
Mix, as I said, dispersed throughout.
The reason you wouldn't want to do that is precisely for the question that I answered for Supervisor, for Councilperson Schneider, and that is that what happens is when a resident becomes a higher, their income level goes higher. Okay, you don't move them out of the unit. We don't have segregated units. We don't even describe them the way you want us to describe them because that, again, would be segregating the units. We don't do it that way. It's become the units that become available are the ones that we have to rent. They will be designated in the first instance, but as the project ages in place, those units are going to shift around simply to accommodate the problem that Councilman Schneider raised. Yeah.
Well, the reason why I ask is because I don't want to be someone come up and say, why didn't you make sure that it was interspersed correctly? Because I know other cities do require that there is some percentage. They even go so far as saying which units. I'm not even asking for that. I'm asking for how many per floor. That's all I'm asking for. So, I know other cities do this. And it is a practice.
It has to be mixed. I'm not looking to put people in a ghetto here. These are.
Well, I'm just a little concerned why it's only first 4 floors and you got 10-story. I'm not advocating that the top floors because that's your biggest. That's your biggest, highest profit margin
right.
sections. I'm not advocating that at all. But you got 10 floors, so why is it only on 4 floors?
Did you say 16 units per floor? Did I hear that? 16 units?
Ruben said that.
No, there's more than 16 units per
floor.
Off the top, I couldn't tell you how many units there are per floor. Is the 190? Sal, you want to do the numbers?
Mayor?
Yes.
Didn't the discussion of where the units would go, that's already been discussed approved in the developer agreement? And what we're doing tonight is how to maintain the affordability numbers. That's all we're really talking about right now.
That was already determined in the development agreement.
Okay.
We are establishing the mechanism by which we ensure that this number of units remain affordable from here on out.
Okay. All right.
Plus. So to Councilmember Lee's question, so maybe I can help you with this a little bit. I've been through a few of these BMR units in other cities. They're undetectable. You don't know which. They're not identified as BMR units for any reason other than they're rented low, and quite frankly, the neighbors don't even know. I mean, there's no reason why anybody should know because they're built all together, all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, for example, Magnolia, I had 20% low income. None of my residents knew and I still have 10% of my units are still BMR units, even though I'm not in the program anymore since 2014. I still have 10 residents that are still BMR residents that I've honored their agreement, even though I'm not required to. And nobody, my bookkeepers know, but none of the residents know who they are, unless the residents told someone. Yeah.
Mr. Holliver?
But there would be a reporting requirement to the city to ensure that
there's a requirement every year to provide, and the city has a right to audit, and we have to pay for the audit, and there's a fee that we pay for the audit that is CPI increased through the 55 years.
We actually have to report that to the City of California every year.
Good.
That's reviewed by the council annually.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. I have one request to make.
That's not on the agenda, but go ahead.
While you're
Your request, Mr. Musi.
Yeah, I've got it's 11 words that I want to add. It's a policy question, and I didn't want to deal with it with the attorneys. I want you to deal with it. And the rationale is quite simple. One of the requirements that we have is a traffic mitigation program, which is quite strict and which we want to comply with and be able to make work. The concern that I have is that the units are designated to try to make it also work housing so that people who work in Millbrae within a half mile can have a priority and be able to rent the affordable units. That's fine. But you can also game the system. And someone could move into a unit who's working, let's say, for the city of Millbrae. And they come into the unit and then they don't work for the city of Millbrae after a year or two. And they could be there for 55 years. I don't think that's what you wanted, and that's not what I want. I want to see that continues to be work-related to people living in Millbrae. It's important to me in our traffic mitigation, because one of the attractive things about the affordable housing with work is that I don't have to count those as cars that come and go and add to the traffic impacts. And so my thought is that if every 5 years that priority that we give them because they work in Millbrae becomes a condition of whether we renew with them or not. It doesn't mean we throw them out. It just means that if that was the priority on which they came in, they lose that priority. And if someone has that priority, they gain a unit.
Well, the problem number one I have here is this is the longest sentence I've ever seen.
They're all long.
But where's the period? Yeah, there's no periods in this entire paragraph. Does legal counsel have an opinion on this?
You know, Mr. Musi, we have been talking about this agreement for a long time. I'm feeling like this is not appropriate to be negotiating with the council.
That aside, it's before us.
Well,
he snuck it in on you. I'll give you that.
The problem is, this is not a question that I think your legal counsel should be deciding. This is something you have to tell me. This is how I feel about it. If you don't feel that way about it, it doesn't have to go in. But do you really want to give someone a 55-year potential occupancy if the priority is to try to have folks that work in Millbrae within a half mile have a way of walking to work and not have to drive?
Well, that is a preference under the
Right,
agreement, but not necessarily a mandate.
No, it is not. I agree.
That's right. So if this preference were to be given to someone, I don't feel that Mr. Musey's request here is out of the area of reference, because, yes, we do want people to work here who qualify and are within that realm to have the benefit of these units. Again, it's not a mandatory requirement for an applicant to be employed by the city of Millbrae. However, if someone is an employee, my impression is that this fifth-year renewal thing is not I mean, we do want people to live here, and he's trying to suggest, too, that this would impact the traffic study, because people who work here and live, if they were to obtain this.
I mean, for me, that was one of the attractions of the BMR program, is that it allowed for that, and it made sense because we've got a pretty severe traffic reduction that we have to do. And over time, that could erode.
So you mean that by ensuring that X number of people living in the building work in Millbrae, it's part of your transportation demand management plan. It's not a transportation study. It's part of your ways of achieving reduced trip.
Right.
Reduced trips.
And they have 5 years. I mean, it isn't like we're saying, if they
so to me, this sounds,
assurance.
Okay, I'm just saying, to me, this sounds reasonable, but at this 9th hour or 11th hour, what do other cities do? If they, especially back in the days when cities were putting their own funds in to make sure that city funds were achieving the goals of those city funds, is there a similar model that we can look at that's been in practice for a while?
I have to look at the rental. I'm more familiar with acquisition and ownership rather than rentals, but I think it would be as simple as you would plan to write this into the lease at the front end,
they would
and monitor it that way.
They would know that, that part of the reason if they are coming in because they've got they're employed in Millbrae and they're asking a priority, that's going to be a consideration for their being able to lease, and we want to be able to encourage that those.
So let me see how this would work. I'm an employee. I work for the city of Millbrae, or I work at Walgreens. Yes. And I qualify and I rent, and then 3 years down the road, I get a job in some other city.
Right.
And I can stay in my apartment for 2 more years.
Right.
But at that 5th year, if I've got an apartment that is designated for local employment, I lose that point in being whether I qualify or not.
Right, and they go into the pool. If there's nobody else that's qualified because they're locally employed, they renew.
And that's legal?
Yeah. This is a preference, and I think it was put in, and I imagine it's pretty standard in agreements with cities, which is why it's here.
In which case, I'm okay with that.
Oh, his language is not standard, but what you see is standard, so you would be departing. But it's a preference.
Vice Mayor Lee?
I really object to this last minute. I think staff needs to do analysis. I'm not an expert at this field, and I feel that I need to understand all the avenues. I appreciate your thoughtfulness and what you're trying to do, but it still needs to have an analysis done because there's other impacts that we have not considered and we don't understand. So I prefer that it goes back to staff to give us analysis. If you don't have to negotiate with them, but I just want to see analysis and understand both sides.
I don't want to delay your consideration of this. If that's the issue, I just don't want to go through that.
Again, this is not a mandatory aspect of any applicant. It is something that we would like to see. It would likely impact, in the positive, the traffic compliance. Mr. Holliber.
I tend to agree with Vice Mayor Lee on this. I think this was, I don't have anything against you, Mr. Musi, but I think adding something like this should go through staff. I know when we went through our initial public hearings, there were several outstanding items and several requests that you had, and several of them we did agree to, or we were at least able to find common ground on. But those were all items that were negotiated through staff over a long period of time before coming to the council and not dropped on us at the last minute.
If I may, I believe that the reason I didn't take it up was this is not, there are certain issues that I believe your attorneys are appropriate to decide. This is a policy issue.
Right.
And I think that's the question. Does the council feel that these units that have a preference, that you give someone a preference because they are employed in the city, is that something that you want to continue? And isn't it important to continue it if it's part of the traffic mitigation? Okay. If you feel that that's not important and you don't care whether people work in Redwood City and use these apartments for that, and it all, the whole intent of affecting traffic isn't important, if that's your policy decision, I'm okay with it. This makes no difference to me. I don't get $1 more for doing this. It just doesn't make sense to me that you're going to take an asset of the city that was intended and designed to meet one need, and then after 5 years not care who's there.
So one concern that I have about this language is what it will do to retirees. If somebody retires, then they're no longer...
That's an ADA. That's a different issue because you can't discriminate. We couldn't discriminate against them for age under any circumstance.
Okay, but if somebody retires, then they're no longer employed in Millbrae or close to Millbrae.
No, but you couldn't make that. I couldn't. In all honesty, I couldn't make that call. I mean, in other words, I would have a violation of a right that I have to respect. In other words, if they're handicapped and can't work in Millbrae, I can't make that a condition of their residency. They're separate things that I have to respect. I mean, that's the law.
All due respect, I don't support this at this time, but thank you.
Vice Mayor Lee.
Well, I mean, the question is it going to be 5 people going to be affected? Is it going to be 20? I have no idea. And I don't even want to go there. I don't want to kick somebody out because they don't live in the city and they need to look for housing because the city kicked them out, because we have this rule that says, oh, you can't live here anymore. You have to go somewhere else because you moved your job somewhere. I don't think that's right.
Councilman Lee, that is the policy question. And if you feel that way, fine. I'm just asking the question. If that's the criteria that you don't care, that's okay. I mean,
I also feel
that's incorrect. I do care, and I care about people having a place to live.
No, I appreciate it. I'm saying if you don't care about where they are coming from as far as work, if that's not a criteria of importance, then that's okay. I understand.
Too many conversations going on. Mr. Holliber?
Through the chair. The half-mile radius also seems fairly arbitrary to me.
That's yours. I never made...
I know. But, somebody moving from half a mile to 1 mile out, that's still a very short trip. That's, it's not a material change to me that would, I think, necessitate having to kick somebody out or having to try to find somebody else to move in. So that being said, I don't feel comfortable with this addition at the last minute.
Okay, understood. Ms. Oliva?
Why the 12th hour? Why is this here tonight?
Because it was a policy question that I did not want to raise with the attorneys. I thought this is a policy question that the council needs to decide. And I'm okay if you don't want to do it. It's not, this does not affect me anything except, it's going to make more difficult over time to comply with what you want in the way of traffic mitigation. Okay?
I just feel like I come prepared here. Every single time I get here, I read everything, I make phone calls, I do what I need to do. And you kind of put me on the spot here. because I want to support. I want to support.
I understand that when I come to meetings, okay, I get put on the spot with all sorts of things that get added to my project or changed from my project, and that's been going on for 5 years, and I've kind of become resilient about that. I didn't think I would be overwhelming anybody with 11 words.
It's not overwhelming whatsoever. It's just
just not the way you do business.
I'm kind of guessing what's behind it. It's my nature.
What's behind it is you have two policies. One is below market housing that you want to encourage, I believe, that it be available to people who work in Millbrae, and the half mile was not mine. I would have done more than a mile, but that's what the city wanted. So that's not my issue. But once it's there and you're talking about people getting a priority and then that they can essentially be there for 55 years and not be anywhere in the Bay Area as far as where they work, it seems to me that you've got a conflict in policies that's appropriate for the council to decide, not for your attorneys to decide.
And being built as condominiums, when they do go for the sale, this will be included in the sale part of it. This will be
will be determined. The whole sale thing is sort of a separate situation.
But this won't be written. This will go with the sale. Yes.
The language of what happens at the sale is actually negotiated at that time. If I decide to sell the units, I have to come back to the city, and the city will set the criteria for that.
Right.
And it'll be whatever it is at that time.
But this is part of what will be presented at that time.
I don't know that.
I think that these are only for rental units.
This is for rental units.
You kind of confused me a little bit when you said that this will be part of the lease, or it could be part of the lease.
I'm just saying that they would have to write it in the lease, so the person, if they
make them aware of it,
jobs,
you have to put it in.
They would be aware of it.
Right.
But I think also on a rental unit, you have a annual adjustment increase that you can correct it.
I have to requalify them every year, their income. I mean, you go through, it's not a simple process. You have to take their pay stubs or their income tax returns, and you verify.
When that one tenant moves out, then can you readjust to the county median, or is that something that's done with your tenant?
If they're BMR, they're BMR. And
they're defined by BMR, but it's also our responsibility to qualify them as well. So yes, the paper comes to us, but we have to make sure that they're qualified as well by the definition of BMR at the time.
Yeah, I pay the city to come in and do an audit once a year. I forget what the amount is per unit, but they do. It's around roughly $4,000 a year with CPI increases to audit that. In fact, the residents that we've allowed to use BMR are qualified. So I mean, look.
If median income outpaces the increase in rent, that's the only thing that would have to be analyzed. If the median county income went up 5%, but the rent only went up 3%. That's where it would have to be analyzed.
I'm not sure where the county. I mean, it's whatever the HUD numbers are for the county. There aren't two sets of rent numbers. It's one set of numbers that come from the county that are based on HUD.
Well, we could use some more HUD housing too. But okay, so my question here would be: an employee within the city of Millbrae loses their job for whatever reason. This 5-year, say they have qualified for BMR unit, and if they work at Walgreens and they lost their job, and they happen to be within the 5-year, at what point in time does this 5 years kick in? It'd be terrible for somebody to lose their job for whatever reason, and then all of a sudden they're in year 5.
But if they're in year 5 and they lost their job from Walgreens and that was their last job, the way
we're not saying that Walgreens doesn't pay well, but
no. I mean, if their last job is Walgreens, I would say they're still an employee. Their last job was Millbrae. Okay, so I mean, I don't think that changes it.
So what would happen at that point, Mr. Musi, is that if the person was no longer employed in Millbrae, they would no longer be or get a preference for this unit. and you would look to fill the unit with someone else who does live in Millbrae. Am I understanding that?
Yes, but your presumption would be that the last place of employment, I think, would be the legitimate. If somebody was working in Millbrae and lost their job at Millbrae, as far as I'm concerned, they've been working in Millbrae. They're in Millbrae. It's like a retired person. If they retired from Millbrae, they retired from Millbrae. That's their last place of employment.
But what if I worked at Walgreens and then I was transferred to Walgreens in Burlingame? So now I'm kind of seeing how that could be problematic.
Yeah,
There's still a resident of Millbrae, a valued person of Millbrae. I will withdraw the change. I mean,
I do think, as I
clearly
you analyzed
All right.
further because
Okay. Well, Mr. Musi has just withdrawn it, so we have no further topic of discussion. Thank you very much.
I just think you still have
Thank you.
I mean, I think it's something you should think through in future developments as to how you want this to work, because I think that you've created a sort of a conflict where you're going to, over time, you're going to lose, the preferences are going to be lost is the problem.
Well, we hope not to lose the preferences, and we do appreciate trying to give preferences to those who work in Millbrae. We thank you for thinking outside the box and listening to the discussion this evening. Okay. We have before us, and we have a motion by Ms. Schneider and a second by Ms. Oliva. Your votes, please.
Item number 9 passed unanimously.
Interesting discussion. Thank you. Item 10, new business. Adoption of a fiscal year 2018-2019 Community Enhancement Advisory Committee work plan. Thank you, Mr. Musi. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This will be a little bit different than the previous presentation. So my name's Carol Krasilnikoff. I'm the chair of the Community Enhancement Advisory. It's actually commission, not committee. And I'm here to present our work plan for the 2018-2019 for your consideration. These are our members. We have 2 members. We got 1 new member, but only lasted a year and then left. And then one of our members has recently retired from the commission. But we do have 3 new members this year, so we are short 1 member. So I think we're doing pretty well.
And what does your committee, how many members?
I believe that we have 8 now, but we are, could have 9. And it's been a couple of years, I think, since we had that many, because we didn't used to have that many. And what have we been doing? Well, we've worked with council on the downtown improvements, and just recently, the new news racks have arrived, if you have seen them. And they're much nicer than the old ones, and there are not nearly so many of them. So we're very happy about that. And the littering signage that we worked on with council has gone up. Enforcement would be good. And tree ordinances, we have been working on tree ordinances because we really haven't had any. And just recently from Public Works, I got a draft ordinance that will be coming to council at some point after it goes to parks that will include heritage trees and some, heritage trees on private developed property as well. Because right now we only have the street tree ordinance, and also fines will be increased if you end up passing the new tree ordinance, which we certainly hope that you will. And Valerie, Carly, and I have been, Valerie, Carly, and I have been on the Community Center Advisory Committee, which is very cool and great fun, and we really like it, and we love being able to have input for the new rec center. And we have 2 new subcommittees. We have parking, which is Valerie and Janet Creech, and they're working on that and working, I think, with some information from the city as well from staff. And Ann Kirkbride and I are on the tree subcommittee, and we have a lot of information on trees, and we will hopefully be moving forward with that and possibly looking for grants with some help. And we've been doing our beautification and WaterWise awards as we always do. We have done the last one but have not yet presented. We would really like some additional code enforcement, and we have been working with staff on that, and they have been working to provide the city with some, so that's a great thing. And I told you about 3 new members. Oh, and we did work with the Parks Committee on the landscaping for City Hall, and we hope to be included with the parks on the on more landscaping for the city. And addressing climate change, well, that's part of the general plan, and we're doing that through the tree subcommittee for one, and whatever else that we can do. And what else? Okay, we have these aren't necessarily in any kind of order. They're just, and some of it was a little difficult getting in line with the goals of the council, because some of them they're very good, but they did not apply, like, hiring a new city manager and things like that. So I told you about the parking plan, and Valerie and Janet are working on that. And then public smoking, which we see as, let me see, I'm sorry. Well, the public smoking is both we think part of the business improvement district, which we are very happy about and would like to see something formed. We're supportive of that. And also, it would be affected in when Mr. Muzi's and other developments go in, seeing if there's limited smoking in multi-use dwellings, or no smoking, which may be something that comes to pass. And I said, let me see what we got the draft from Public Works for the trees. A lot of what we've been doing, we've been playing catch up, like with the code enforcement brochure, because we worked on that for a long time, and then it sort of went nowhere. But we are back in action, and we think as part of the general plan that citizens need to know what is and what is not allowed or mandated by city policy and city, what am I looking for? Code, actually. So, and we'd like to get that done, and we'd like to get it on the city website, and probably, anyway, that's what we would like to do. So, and then we'd like to establish a public space and median planting plan, especially for El Camino Real. But that involves working with Caltrans. I mean, we are responsible for planting and upkeep, but the state has some, we're not sure what they're doing yet as to watering. As in, we're not going to plant a bunch of stuff and then not be able to water it. And that goes really with the Grand Boulevard plan, which has been around for many years but not really implemented. So, any questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me see what I can do for you.
Yeah. Having started in the city on this committee,
right,
we greatly appreciate all your work and effort here. It seemed a little scattered.
Right.
So the Grand Boulevard is active throughout the county. Millbrae seems to have the largest portion of the Grand Boulevard within San Mateo County. So I'm a little unclear on what the committee's plan is.
Right.
In either participating in the Grand Boulevard or what you are viewing in that realm, if you could clarify.
Well, as far as the Grand Boulevard goes, my understanding is that we need to work with other cities on that. And some cities are interested and some are not. And I have heard that Burlingame is not interested in it, but cities farther down that way are.
Okay, so yeah, again, I think we're a little off focus here. Ms. Schneider?
I don't specifically remember at a meeting talking about Grand Boulevard, but I think what had happened is Deputy City Manager Key Lim had come in and spoken about a plan that Public Works is working on, looking at the median strip and some possibilities of moving the plantings to a more drought-tolerant program, in which case the plantings would come back to community enhancement to look at the plants, because frankly, their committee has a lot more plant knowledge than Park and Rec does. So when it came to this planting out here in front of City Hall, they had more experience with some of the plants, which might survive in a particular environment or another. But Grand Boulevard, I'm not sure. I know I haven't brought any Grand Boulevard in.
It has been brought up.
They probably have a list of plants that they prefer, plants that work well with traffic or plants that help slow traffic down. And that's one of the things of looking at plantings along any major street. But if we go back to the tree heritage, because I thought you had a question about trees.
Okay, yeah.
Because that also impacts.
It's kind of focus here, so let me.
I wouldn't worry too much about Grand Boulevard. I don't think.
No, it's just the El Camino Real median is not good.
No, it's pathetic. It's dirty right now. I've been asking city staff to please clean that up. It's just horrendous. The trees have died. But again, that is a state highway, and I don't think the beautification committee, it's bad enough that staff has to deal with Caltrans, and I'm hoping they will deal with them very soon. The instructions I believe the city staff have been given is that the replacement foliage or trees that go in there are sustainable, that they have, we're talking bioswales, we're talking all the improvements that should be in there so that we are not put in this position again due to droughts and everything like that.
And
I appreciate
due to there being another road underneath it.
Pardon me?
And that there's another road underneath it.
What do you mean?
Underneath El Camino, there's another layer of asphalt under there. And the tree roots have no place to go.
Well, again, this is an obvious result of bad planning to begin with. We had extensive drought, then we had some rain. Too many trees died throughout the entire state here.
Right.
So we all would like to see that improved immediately, particularly the cleanup, if I'm not sending the appropriate message. The trash right now, it's pathetic. But I don't believe that this committee, as far as making recommendations, that's great, but I kind of believe that it would not be efficient. I want to see this happen as quickly as possible as far as the median goes here. So committee input would be nice, but to send things back and forth between the committee and city staff, I think that's going to slow things down here. I think there's a lot to do for the committee within the city and city properties. Again, we're talking El Camino is a state highway.
It depends what you mean by city properties.
Well, the front of City Hall here,
right?
Various parks throughout. You're talking about a tree program,
right?
And that was going to be one of my questions. Didn't we, as a committee, have a flyer here in City Hall about the trees? Didn't the committee previously have?
That's just on pruning the street trees, basically, and saying that you need a permit to do so.
Okay.
And this is in a broader context of an urban forest.
Okay.
Which
so
we replace trees, and we have standards for trees, and we have continuity in what trees we put downtown as part of the downtown plan.
Well, I think I'm just a little confused about task 2 here as to, you're talking about an urban forest program implementation. And Millbrae is known for their trees. We get that.
No, we're not.
No, we have.
We're not known for. If we're known for sick trees, we are not known for.
We're a tree city, is what I'm referring to.
Yeah, but being a tree city is not that hard when you look at the requirements, actually.
Okay, so what are the requirements?
Well, we have, for being a tree city, you have to have, gee, I don't have it in front of me, but I did look at it, and it's not difficult. You have to have either an arborist, or you have a tree committee, or you have a staff that is dedicated to trees, and we have an arborist.
We have an arborist, yes.
Right.
But you're also supposed to dedicate 2% of a particular revenue stream to the enhancement and addition of your urban forestry. We don't have a heritage tree ordinance. What that means,
don't.
For example, without having that ordinance, when Caltrain came in and cut down trees for electrification, they only had to do a 1-to-1 replacement, and they didn't have to do a same-size tree replacement. Burlingame, that has a heritage tree ordinance, had a 2-to-1 replacement. So let's go back to the PG&E trees that they cut down on Richmond. Right now, we have no teeth legally to say, PG&E, you've got to do anything more than a 1-to-1 and not a like-sized trees, and those were big mature trees. So part of their program is that's part of the heritage tree. What happened at the last community enhancement meeting was Parks came in and gave a description. So it's not as if this committee is going to be going back and forth with Parks over plans. When it came to the City Hall plans, they came to one meeting, they discussed it, boom, done. This was not taking months and months to do, but just allowing this committee to work with Park and Rec and come up with things mutually. And it shouldn't have been just El Camino Real. If you look at the margin strip along Millbrae Avenue, or you look at basically what's all cement along Richmond Drive, we have other areas in town that have public plantings. So it's kind of looking at all of those public plantings in some kind of cohesive plan.
Okay.
And the Parks Commission so far has been fine with us looking at the plantings. We don't do rec fees and fields, and that's not us.
Okay. The committee plans are supposed to incorporate what the city's priorities are here, and I think some of what's planned is far in excess, because we appreciate all the work that all the committees are doing with the general plan. And a lot of this, I think what's trying to be achieved by this plan really is encompassed in the general plan. So I would think that making recommendations to the general plan, as you have been doing throughout, is the most important aspect of what's being presented here.
But
I think, crossing over, it's not a city priority to ban smoking. It is a city priority to do the littering ordinance, and we hope that will be enforced fully. So I think the plan far exceeds.
Well, I looked at the top 10 priority goals, and a lot of them we had a hard time with it, because a lot of them we had nothing to do with. I mean, hire a permanent city manager. That's sort of out of our bailiwick. And establish value of city-owned properties. A lot of these, we were just way out of our realm. So we talked amongst ourselves and put together what we thought was important. And we did consider what the city council priorities were. It's just some of them weren't, it was really hard to mesh together. Yes. Oh, sorry.
So used to being
okay. Vice Mayor Lee?
Yeah, I think you're obviously doing a lot of work, and this is one of the more busiest committee. I'm just confused because like you said, a lot of these tasks are other commissions' responsibilities. Some of them, like parking plan, even though your input is important, and especially in the general plan, parking plan kind of falls more in the planning commission, I would think, or economic vitality. So my general thing is,
well,
you guys
economic vitality was just so non-existent for so long.
Let me finish, please. Let me finish, please. I'm sorry. I'm gonna lose. Otherwise, I just lose track of what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry.
I understand.
So, is there a mission statement? I mean, there's something focused for this committee?
Yeah, we do have a mission statement. I do not have it with me at the moment.
Because that would help us understand
Right.
what the committee's trying or commission's trying to focus on.
Well, it's been hard because a lot of this stuff we're just trying to catch up on because we had it before. I think when you were our liaison, we were talking about the about code, and that's been a long time. And then we were stymied for a long time. It did nothing, and now we want to go back to it. But in the meantime, some other things have popped up. So, yeah, we probably do need to focus more. I agree.
Okay. 1 second, please. Mr. Holliver?
Yeah, well, this is an ambitious work plan, but especially for, a volunteer commission that meets once a month. But if you have, individuals on the commission that are willing to serve on a subcommittee and take this up at the subcommittee level, I think that's fine. And quite frankly, personally, my view is I think the commissions, there should be some, relation to the council goals, but for the most part, I'm supportive of the commission setting their own goals and work plans. And I think this is a good plan.
Well, both the parking and the trees are subcommittees.
Right.
Okay, but, Ms. Schneider, go ahead. I'll
Okay,
comment.
both the parking and the trees were approved in last year's work plan. Remember when the committee members came up and pushed for what they wanted? So they have been working as a subcommittee. They have, as both parking and with trees. And a lot of the other things, what they tried to do was take the goals. So if you look at general plan, a lot of these are subsets of things that will feed into the general plan. So you're exactly correct on that. But what they tried to do was identify something that they could get their hands around. Because frankly, we've been telling all of our committees and commissions to comment on the general plan. It was going to come to us 1.5 years ago. So we can't even comment on it, let alone them commenting on it. But we know that there's going to be a climate action plan section, and trees are a major portion of climate action plans. We know that parking they fought for. This committee fought to be able to do parking, and they've been working diligently on different ways of trying to free up parking so that the merchants downtown can get customers to them. And a lot of these things where I can see how you can see that it's confusing, but to me, they pretty much fit under a climate action plan. And their mission includes the word environment. So you're seeing much more environment coming through. And I think the smoking is up there because they also read what's happening on Nextdoor, what the community says in letters to the editor. And frankly, smoking has been an issue that keeps coming up from the public. So if they're feeding up from the public, smoking, trees,
and just what we see with our own eyes with the downtown.
But a lot of this isn't really any different than their plan last year.
So if it was in the plan last year, what have you done as far as the parking plan goes?
Valerie and Janet have worked very hard on the parking plan, and if you want to see their work, I'm sure that they'd be happy to provide it. I think that Tom has seen some of their work.
Yeah, well, I'm just because
it hasn't come to fruition.
Comes from. I understand what Ms. Schneider said, that this was a part of a plan. So what has been done? I think it's easier for the council to understand a committee's plan when they can see what's been done over the last year. So if parking plan was part of that. It's been 1 year now. What recommendations or what have they come up with there? I've also talked to the city manager here about even establishing some sort of a parking what?
A parking authority.
A parking authority, which evidently comes with funding aspects and things like that for the future. So that's why I'm curious to see what's been done by the committee when it relates to, number one, a parking plan. Number 7 here, the climate action plan. I thought we had one going here. Sorry that Ms. Ryder's not here, but I'd be curious. I know we've taken specific actions here at the council related to climate action for many years now. So I'm slightly confused.
Which
My
I
apologies.
did look through quite a few of those today. And a lot of it, decreasing greenhouse gases.
Moving towards electric vehicle. I mean, I thought we had a plan, and I would like to find out exactly where we are in this plan, because I know CCAG asks that you have some sort of a plan. So I'm confused. There's a lot of
Well, I was a little confused on the climate action plan myself, and I was looking for a specific climate action plan for Millbrae, and I could not find one.
Okay. Ms. Oliva.
Just to clarify, Mayor, if I may, we do not have one. It's part of the general plan update. It's an element of the general plan, which getting that to the council is your number one priority that you adopted.
Well, specific plan and then general plan.
Ms. Oliva?
So, Carol, this is a lot of work. You have more goals and tasks on it that we did from our council goals. And while I could appreciate, I did get to serve on that committee as a liaison, and it's a wonderful group. What I fear is in reading all of these tasks and not taking them from the council goals is that your work is going to go unnoticed. And so when you're doing a lot of work on a parking plan and then council and staff are going in a separate direction with what's going on for a parking plan, I don't want anybody to get frustrated and overworked and underpaid. So
Right, I understand that. I think that the parking plan is going more in line with the city.
It is going in line with the city, I hope, but we don't know because we haven't seen yours, and we don't even know what ours is particularly, so specifically.
Right, and I know that our subcommittee is, I believe they're waiting to get something from staff. Because I know that staff has been working on a parking plan, or a parking study, excuse me.
So can I ask for clarification once again? So is this just for one part of the city, or is this throughout the city? Is this, can you clarify that for me? Because we have various parking issues. We have downtown issues. We have people parking in the residential areas when they shouldn't be. We have transit people parking in residential areas. So what?
It would be overall, because I know they've been looking at people parking on city streets that are just walking down and taking BART. So that's a big parking issue, especially for the people along, is it Ashton? Yeah.
Kind of all over. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, you have task 5 here, parking plan. Advise and review proposals for parking plan. So it seems like the committee is just waiting for the city to come up with a plan to comment on? Ms. Schneider, go ahead.
Okay. The city did release, Tom, and make sure I've got it on the timeline. We released an RFP for a parking study. What the Subcommittee of Community Enhancement did over the last year was review various city parking plans and transportation demand management plans. They looked at the various types of technology, the various types of metering, or paid structured parking, so the difference between surface lot parking, street parking, and structure parking. And they had hoped to work with staff in designing the RFP and the tasks. But the RFP went out, and they have been working with the staff person specifically because that staff person came to one of their meetings. So they're trying to make that connection. That is not at all unusual with park staff working with Park and Rec Commission on the park master plan, which is now morphed into the park inventory. We haven't seen any of those either, but the commissioners and staff have seen them. This is the same thing as the subcommittee of parking has seen the parking RFP, and we're still waiting for the information to come back from the study. It's due in December-ish. Not we, the council, we, you staff.
The parking study?
Correct.
The key in the day, we're about a month into the study.
Right.
So
there's
probably
no results,
more the first of the year.
But they've shared what their research was with our staff.
I can explain a little bit about our parking study. We did issue a contract to Kittleson. Kittleson is one of the sub-consultants to the general plan team. And we have had a kickoff meeting about a month ago. And because of downtown construction, there's some logistic issues. So we postponed the inventory count to the first week of December. So you're going to see us out there doing inventory count and parking utilization in the first and second week of December. And the focus here will be the core downtown area, although we are going to study the expanded downtown area. The expanded downtown area will be from Millbrae Avenue all the way to Helen. And we'll expand to the east sides of El Camino and go all the way west to Poplar.
But I can tell you that the parking subcommittee under community enhancement has looked citywide. So, for example, Ridgewood, there's somebody who's running a taxi service out of their home, so there's cars all over. They recognize that, and they'll be making some recommendations of what do you do when you have a commercial operation in a residential area.
Okay, so I guess my fear is here that we're creating bureaucracy that's, I appreciate if the committee wants to offer comments to help staff improve whatever plans are offered. But when it says advise and review proposals from parking plans, it's just, that's for the staff to do and then present to the council. Vice Mayor Lee?
Well, I mean, the question is, I mean, the economic vitality committee is also addressing parking. Planning Commission's addressing parking. So we have multiple groups addressing parking. I mean, that's a lot of effort and time by many, many groups. And it seems to me like it should be just one group with maybe input from other groups. Might be, yeah.
Okay, I understand council approved it last year, Ms. Schneider, but we haven't seen any results here, and it's coming up here again. And okay, we would like, I think, a little more focus in what's being proposed here. The task number 6 is just not one of the priorities. We all agree, as it includes beautification and the city's cleanliness, right, that smoking's a problem and the butts are a problem. But if you have suggestions, we've put up the towers. There's been conflict on those. If you put up the towers, then people smoke more. So I would just like to set you up for success in what you're trying to
well, I have
on your tasks.
I have members that feel that we should have no public smoking. And that's something that the council can look at some point.
Vice Mayor Lee?
I think I need to see a mission statement so we can focus. It seems like there's a lot of different places where you're focusing on. It's, I mean, everybody's inputs. I just don't like to see it as don't want to see the committee, like the mayor stated, just doing a lot of things that is redundant of other committees and their mission statements. So I think what is the mission of what is the goals of the committee? I mean, it's going all over the place right now. I mean, everything is all
well,
related.
we are supposed to enhance the city,
and everything.
And I think that covers quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Are you the city council now? Because I'm not trying to be facetious or anything.
Right.
I'm just saying, you can relate everything to everything. I mean, the air we breathe, we all breathe the same air. So everything can be related. So at some point, we need to help you get focused. So then you don't have to spinning your wheels, doing a lot, being pulled apart, doing different things that other committees are already doing.
Well, I don't know that other committees or commissions are working on parking.
And I would say that Janet, I believe, is the liaison to the Economic Vitality Advisory Committee, right, but they have had many meetings canceled because of lack of quorum. So it's hard to work with a committee that isn't meeting due to lack of quorum.
Well, I mean, they're an advisory committee too. They're not a commission or anything. And the planning commission is the ones who are going to approve and advise the city council on the general plan and the parking plan, which is part of the general plan.
I'm wondering if it's getting late. Clearly, council is confused by these things not feeling like fitting together. Can we ask Community Enhancement, who will meet again in a week and a half, to sit down and look at this and come up with an update of what they have been doing. And I want to remind everybody here, as well as the public, that for many years, what this committee did was the beautification awards. So you had, at that time, 11 people working on beautification awards, which may not have been the best use of 11 people's volunteer time. And the council in 2016 gave them additional mission, and they have been trying to respond to the additional mission that we gave them in October of 2016. We gave them environment.
Additional members.
We gave them, and in fact, that mission was created before I got on council. That was created by Annie Oliva and Marge Colapietro, giving them the functional area of environment. And environment means trees. It means parking, because that means greenhouse gases. It means a bunch of these things. But I think that the community enhancement can get together and maybe move these around a little bit so they feel like a more cohesive piece, and that might help council understand that they're not spinning their wheels. I'm going to also say that unlike Planning Commission and Park and Rec Commission, this committee for the longest time didn't have staff other than staff taking minutes. A number of our committees and commissions were like that. Now they have staff who are working cooperatively together. That's how the utility box project is coming underway. It is a combined staff and committee activity, and this is a great thing. This is a good thing. And let's just look at this as growing pains and let them come back with a better,
because we
better
do
concept.
feel that we have staff that is very willing and very able to help, and that's a change from what we had before. So we could be getting a little overboard because we feel we're finally getting let out of the box, and we can do what we want to do. We can do what the council wants us to do, but what's good for the city. And it's been really hard for us.
Well, we don't want to make it any harder. The mission of the committee is to promote Millbrae by participating in and supporting activities and programs that improve the aesthetic and physical environment of the community. And then there are various goals. I agree with Ms. Schneider that I think a little more focus would be important, because we want you to succeed and we want staff to be able to help you. But I just think that as currently presented, it could be more focused. Okay?
And staff has been very helpful.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that. Okay.
And for being our liaison.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, Mayor, just a point of clarification. So the direction is for staff to go back and work with this particular committee, focus them and align those more with the city council adopted goals, and then bring that work program back.
I think so.
Yeah, and even with, there was asterisks missing in the report too, so we didn't know where it pertained to the actual goals of the city council.
And I think it would be helpful if the subcommittees acted in such a way over the last year, if they've got some product, present that, because again, part of the problem with all the committees is that they would do a product and then it didn't get up the chain. So we want to make sure that it's realized and recognized.
City Manager, last December, the tree subcommittee showed me their presentation on trees, and it's excellent. But the problem was they were asked tonight to come with 3 slides, and that tree presentation is at least 10 slides, valuable, why trees are important kind of thing. So they're ready to move forward on those things. We just hadn't had an opportunity. They hadn't had an opportunity to bring it forward, because the way we're currently structured is these committees come once a year and give an update. Maybe they need to give us updates more frequently.
Okay. Final item was item 10. We'll move on to council comments, and then we have to move into a closed session. So, Vice Mayor Lee?
I just want to thank staff and the community for supporting the Millbrae Lions crab feed. It was very successful. All the money that we raise goes back to the community, so thank you very much. And since the clean energy, they went to a groundbreaking, as I think I announced in last meetings, at what was that place again, Councilwoman? Los Baños, yes. So it's a $500 million project, and it helps PCE have reliable energy. It's going to provide energy to 100,000 homes. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg. But, they also, the PUC has had a ruling that's going to, that says that anybody who wants to opt out of PG&E has to pay a fee. But luckily, I think PCEs run so well that we're going to be able to absorb that, but I think that's still under discussion. So those are the big ticket items for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Holliver?
Yes, I would like to once again congratulate our man, woman, and student of the year, Steve Luzaich, Deirdre Gladwin, and Stephanie Wong. That was a wonderful event and well-deserved honor for all three. Also, I'd like to echo Vice Mayor Leah and congratulating the Lions for another wonderful crab feed. That was a lot of fun on Saturday evening. And just remind everybody to vote with the election coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schneider?
I attended the Housing Leadership Program Day last Friday. Learned a couple of.
Your mic's on.
I attended the Housing Leadership Council's Housing Day last week, where I did receive an award for housing leadership based on basically the bullying by the public for the Gateway Project at Millbrae, for standing up to the harassment that was done by a particular group of individuals. In addition, it was pretty interesting. They asked for cities to look at two different things. There is a form of predatory lending where people are buying low-income apartment units. They're basing their mortgage on increasing the rents, which automatically then are forcing out lower-income people. So they have asked for cities to look at the businesses that they're banking with for having a code of conduct for the banks that we do. The bank that was in question was First Republic, I believe, out of Menlo Park, and they have tracked them to over 500 purchases of low-income housing that then gets converted to market-rate housing. So they're very worried about existing low-income housing getting turned over very quickly to market-rate housing. They had another interesting discussion about El Camino and the future of retail, that using Mountain View as sort of the leading example of their Mountain View El Camino Real, that they recognize that there'll be villages and nodes for retail development and most likely infill housing, because we have so much retail in America, so much retail in this area, we'll never get enough retail to fit the spaces that we already have. So for me, it was a new concept to look at that. And when you concentrate the retail in a particular area, you have people coming for multiple reasons for that retail. This Thursday is Bicycle Pedestrian Committee for the county. We're going to be looking at the scope of work for the San Mateo County Comprehensive Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. The main theme here is connectivity. If we're missing gaps in bike plans, how can we connect with San Bruno? How can we connect with Burlingame? And I think that last Tuesday I was out of town, so I missed it, but our bike and pedestrian subcommittee met and began to look at those connectivity issues. So I'm very happy to hear that bike and pedestrian subcommittee is working with staff and they're working forward on plans, and it would be great to get them in front of council when they're ready. And with that, if for all of you with your PG&E bill, hopefully you've noticed this month that you got a discount from your climate action plan component of your PG&E bill. And I know that I've already given this to City Manager Williams. The people who've been writing to us about it seems to be extremely high water bills. Staff is looking into that. And City Manager, do you want to give a little update of where we are on water bills? Am I putting you on the spot? If not, I'll punt for it.
Well, yeah, the one individual seemed extremely high, and it may be a leak, so we're checking that out.
But aren't we also looking at our water system and our water rates, and just trying to see if we can come up with a way to try to ease some of the burden on water?
Well, we're always looking and analyzing to see, if we're operating efficiently and effectively. But it's nothing that has been directed by the city council, so that's just something that I'm looking at to really educate myself and see if there's any any room to bring that back to the city
I
council.
appreciate that.
If it
When
makes sense.
the public contacts me, I tend to say, City Manager, I'm getting 3 or 4 contacts on water bills this week. So I appreciate the city at least looking.
Ms. Oliva?
So echoing all of the above, I'm not going to go into everything, but I will mention that at the Senior Advisory Committee, in anticipation of a new community center, rec center, they have started here beginning the last Friday of every month, starting January 25th, 11 to 12, a social hour. So they want to have an hour just to meet new people, chat with old friends, and enjoy some free coffee. And hopefully they'll spill it into the new center if we go forward with that, when we go forward with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and I believe the Lions Club Monster March went on. I was unable. It occurred on the 13th, so our compliments to them as well. In addition to, we have the, there was movies in the park again. Hocus Pocus, I heard, was a huge success on Friday night. So compliments to everyone who joined the festivities there. Superfest Film Festival at the library coming up this Saturday, and Let's Talk Disabilities at the library. Rotary on Sunday. Rotary Kids Carnival is the 28th in Rotary Park. And we have our employee recognition lunch coming up. Also, compliments to the Mills High School students who are actively participating in public comments these days. Very interesting. We enjoy their proposals and encourage them to keep their participation up. We'll emphasize that the short-term rental ordinance is in full force, and we are getting calls and reports about people who have not registered and will therefore pay the consequences for such. It's on the website as to the requirements. If you choose to participate in short-term rental, please take advantage or call city staff so that you are in compliance and not therefore in violation. It's very costly. In addition to that, happy to say that I reached out to Tesla. We are working with them and Safeway to hopefully put in some supercharger stations throughout Millbrae, hopefully at Safeway, where they still owe us some charging stations, so that would be good. And we are always looking for new businesses there. The BID presentation, thank you very much, Mr. Williams. That was very exciting, and we look forward to the results there. Again, hopefully working with some of the committees throughout. We are going to be moving to closed session here, but as was acknowledged earlier, the tragic incident that happened in Millbrae, again, our thoughts and prayers go out to Mr. Okobe's family. An additional Lonnie Brown, Millbrae resident, passed away. This is past, but September 20th. So our thoughts and prayers go out to he and his family. And just last week, Ted Laliotis, who was the former mayor of Los Altos and a good friend, his passing was very sudden. So our thoughts and prayers go out to he and his family as well. We will be closing for, excuse me, Ms. Schneider? Yes, you may.
Thoughts and prayers out to Mayor Michael Brownrigg of Burlingame. His father passed away in the end of September.
All right, we will be moving to closed session in a moment, but once again, we will remind people who are voting, there's a ballot box here in City Hall, and the library will be a polling place.
South San Francisco Rec Center.
Well, you can go online, let's be sure. I don't want to give misinformation.
Well, for sure.
But that'll be the last
Interim Rec Center, excuse me, the Interim Rec Center here in Millbrae will be a voting.
Correct.
The last 4 days.
The 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th are when each city's voting center opens. And then I believe the voting center... the voting center in Millbrae will open on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, 9 to 5 on the 3 days, and then until 8 o'clock on the Tuesday. But the regional voting center in San Bruno should have opened.
South San Francisco.
Oh, they didn't open the
Please
San
check
Bruno
the
one?
website because we want to be completely accurate along.
So we will. We do have a voting center, as the council member said, the 3rd through the 5th from 9 to 6, and then on election day.
7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Correct. Yeah, right behind
So
City Hall at the
please,
temporary.
And if you have not got your ballots yet, most of them should have been gone out. Please contact the county recorder's office to make sure you get your ballots. We encourage everyone to participate in the process. Democracy is not a spectator sport. So please join all of us. Thank you, everyone. Have a very good evening. We will move to closed session.
Mr. Rosa.